So, hello to anyone who is lurking in the chat or watching in the future.
Hey up, Doc.
And welcome to the week excuse for a lit month we have this year.
Listen, September's a rough month. We all know this. There's like so much going on.
Yeah, you should wake me up when it ends.
Yeah, I've been singing that song for the last 7 years. Literally. But yeah.
Yeah. And so this week we are discussing Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days, or in other words,
a tour guide to the British Empire by a Frenchman.
Yeah. Also,
I was about to say, are we going to discuss the casual Victorian racism?
Yeah.
Yeah. You should know my mother's family were Indian.
Yeah.
So this is going to be fun. Just saying.
Yeah. So that's one of the biggest problems I had on rereading it, is the fact that, you know, it's a comedic monologue, or it's a comedic travelogue, but the only time when you could say he's conceivably not punching down in the terms of, you know, the 1800s is when he's punching at Britain.
I mean, to be fair, he's French, so the French are punching up at everyone because no one's lost as many wars as the French.
I feel like it might just be me, but it felt like they tried to... It tried to have a character who was very neurodiverse coded, but it just didn't come off right to me.
Well,
he came off as a man out of his time, and that's for a book set in the 1860s.
Yeah, but it felt like one of those poor attempts at neurodivergent coding.
What about the poor attempts at diversity? The Indian young lady who just so happens to have a proper English education, don't you know?
Oh, and that's why she's so good.
And that's why she's so good, and she's so decent, and...
See, I more saw Fogg as basically a caricature of the stereotypical Victorian English gentleman.
Okay, why haven't either Colin Firth or Hugh Grant played him in something yet? That's the big question.
This is a reasonable question.
Because he is basically, if you've seen, is it Hugh Grant in 2 Weeks' Notice? He plays a foppish English-coded businessman who can barely dress himself, and just he's that dude. You know, he's Colin Firth, but slightly taller, hence Hugh Grant. But that was when Hugh Grant was a lot younger.
I also feel like there's a certain level of like the precision he insists on.
It's very British.
Very. I was about to say it not only feels very British but very Southern.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very. He's a Londoner, isn't he? He's not.
Yeah.
If you said that to a Northerner, you calm your tits, love. You know.
Yeah.
Well, either that or you get your cup of tea thrown at you.
Exactly. And it'd be a lot hotter than 84 degrees Fahrenheit or whatever the fuck.
Like, he's, like, in the text, he's described as the very picture of a London gentleman.
Hello, guys.
Hi, Scummer. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I've decided to be very, very unphilius Fogg-like and arrive a bit late.
Yeah.
Well, you arrive early, but then you get there, but then you walk in on time. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Ring.
Oops.
Right.
That's
I
a
just
ring
have
thing. Rings very punctual.
Yeah.
I'll just have to say that it's been a long, long time since I've read this book, so my memory of it is going to be pretty poor. So I hope I'll contribute what I can.
Fair enough. So I do have to point out, though, only a bloody Londoner had bet 20 grand that I could get around the world that quick in this era.
Yeah.
Only a bloody Londoner would throw that kind of money around.
Oh,
If you tried to call that bet any further north, you'd get a shout of, how much?
And through translation, because inflation exists, through translation, that equates to about 2 million.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How much? Could buy an house for that.
I saw it somewhere when I was just doing a little bit of brush up for this episode, and it was about, it equates to something like 1.75 million or something. It was the actual number, which obviously, is a lot of money, especially back then.
We know Fogg's not poor. Guy can afford to have at least 3 servants. He's got his footman outside the door in the car.
Yep.
He employs passport too, and he's presumably got a cook at home.
Presumably, that man doesn't cook.
Yeah,
he doesn't cook. He eats at the club, but he's the fact that he's even a member of a club tells you everything. He's a private school boy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, you remember
and
of
he's playing cards with the Chancellor of the Bank of England, Guy Paul.
I remember reading it and going, "Is this guy the child of a politician?"
Must be. But this brings me up to my first issue with this. Verne's very good at setting the character in that role. Then he gets every aspect of the character wrong. Now, to put this into perspective, has everyone seen Downton Abbey?
No.
I'm gonna put this into a Downton Abbey perspective for the audience, because that seems to be the thing everyone thinks of when they think of old posh homes. This era that this book is set in is the era the grandmother in Downton Abbey looks back on as the golden age.
Yeah.
And she's the one bitching about progress and everything else. So the fact that he's a single middle-aged bloke with no suitable marriage prospects, only 3 servants, and he's acting like
and only ever goes to the Reform Club to play whist.
Yeah, and these clubs are men only.
Yeah.
So he makes no effort to attempt to find himself a bride.
Yeah.
Has no past to speak of. This dude either has a scandal in his past or he's a confirmed bachelor and his parents have paid him off to get him out of the way. And by confirmed bachelor, I mean gay.
Yeah.
Because that's what that meant pre sort of 1943-ish. Still does in some circles. They still would say, if you move in upper class circles in Britain or talk to academics, the comment will be passed of, we're all going out. Are you bringing your partner? Yeah. Oh, don't bother asking him if he's bringing his partner. He's a confirmed bachelor.
Yeah.
And usually that means he's gay but single.
Yeah.
If he's gay and he's got a partner, he gets invited along and all. Because academics don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw Cambridge has a reputation.
I saw the most bizarre thing the other day that, there's the stereotype, obviously, of, the rich people kissing each other on both cheeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I saw that the other day, but I saw it happen with someone who I know isn't actually upper class, just looks it. They were so confused.
Oh, darling, come here. That one. Yeah.
That one.
But
I can't even do the accent
properly. And Jules Verne spends one or two chapters just establishing how Fogg is.
Yeah, and just to put it into perspective, Darcy in Pride and Prejudice was only worth 20,000.
Yeah.
No,
So he's
Darcy
taking
was
a-
worth 60,000. Bingley was worth 20.
Yeah,
He's taking a wager for the worth of that then.
Yeah, and that's Bingley's entire income for a year. And Bingley maintains at least 3 residences, 2 in the country, no, 2 in the city, 1 in the country, and keeps his sister's livelihood going and everything else.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the kind of income you'd have if you were landed gentry.
Yeah.
I was going to say from what I remember, and like I said, it's been a long time. But one of the things that is established quite early about Fogg's character, and I don't know whether you went into this before I got here, is just like how anal he is about certain details, like time. And it's mentioned that he fired his previous valet for like giving him shaving water that was just a wee bit below the temperature that he prefers. It just seems like he's almost got this. I don't know if I want to say OCD or anything, but
that's
sort of
why
like
almost
attention to
autistic coded.
detail.
Yeah. That's why I said I felt like it was an attempt at neurodivergent coding, and part of that is that it does very much fall into the dickhead savant.
I honestly just think that is the French view of what Englishmen were like at that time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
I
it's
can see
just
that.
Jules Verne taking a crack at like how, stuffy and exacting the British are.
That tracks.
Cheers, Scummer, cheers.
Yeah, I think it's like it goes back into like what was it the famous thing Napoleon called us, a nation of shopkeepers, almost.
Yeah.
It always kind of goes into that sort of.
The thing is, as well, right? I'm sorry. If he wants to be proper, I'll be proper, right? If you want your shaving water set at the right temperature, hire a damn scullery maid to give the water to your valet so it gets to you in a decent amount of time and don't go down after it's been heated up your dick. I watched way too much Downton Abbey when I was a week.
I remember a bit, and I think it's a little while after they actually. Maybe I'm getting ahead of the game here, but a little while after they set out on the journey, and Passepartout realizes that he's left something running or something in the house, and Fogg's like, "Oh, that's going to have to come out of your wages, isn't it?"
Yeah, Yeah.
And yet, in other ways, Fogg does not give a shit about money. I noticed this throughout the whole thing. He throws money at people. And he ends up spending on that journey at least 20 grand, which is all he's got the bet for.
Well, that's the kind of... I'm sorry, I was going to say, because that's kind of the thing with this, that if he I think that's the thing that if he loses this bet, he's ruined, because they'll have the guys at the Reform Club will have half his fortune, and he spends the other half on this and the attempt of making this trip.
Yeah, so Fogg's actually worth 40 grand total.
Yeah,
so he's gonna be like basically he's gonna be a poor man.
He's basically only gonna have his house.
Yeah,
that's it.
The impression I got was that he staked a lot on it, but it was also one of those staking his honor on it things in the end.
Yeah. It is, yeah. It's a case of staking his honor, but as Scummer just put, he's risking having to work for a living. Now, can you see Fogg doing any work for a living?
Can you imagine Fogg pulling a pint?
Can you imagine Fogg sweeping the streets?
Sadly, I can see Fogg pulling a pint, but he'd be like
pulling it back into his throat.
He'd be the one in the like that Guinness advert from years ago about how it takes exactly 1 minute 59.5 seconds to pour the perfect pint, and he would be just like there, like anal about how he's pouring it.
Yeah, it could be, wouldn't it? It'd be the cleanest pub in the country.
Yeah,
with him in there. Let's be honest.
I would actually say if he was a pub landlord, it probably would be a very good place to go and have a drink and eat in, because you know there's going to be a lot of attention to detail and stuff.
Wouldn't exactly be
It's going to be a Michelin star place with, like, you know, the best real ales on tap, and
It wouldn't exactly be a spoons.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't be a spoons. It'd be a lot of things, but it wouldn't be a spoons.
Yeah. But so we are getting a little ahead of ourselves because after Fogg is introduced, Passepartout is introduced.
Yeah. We'll say overconfident Frenchman.
Yeah.
Now, the French do have a reputation of turning out some of the best service personnel in the world. Now, back then, the best butler was an English butler.
Yeah.
Now, the fact that Fogg's even willing to take a French valet tells me that none of the English people will work for him.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we think now, you'd think, if you went into a job of service now, you'd think you'd got to be a certain kind of character to find any sort of pride in it. It'd be sort of your last option.
Yeah, also a
high-level job,
a French valet who spent most of his life as a carny and an acrobat.
So Fogg's priorities are a bit fucked in the beginning.
Yeah.
He's very. He says that he's very precise and has set expectations and everything else. Well, he's not. He lives by the seat of his pants. Yeah. Hires a guy after 2 minutes talking to him. Yeah, places a random ass bet. Like, doesn't even ask the guy for a proper reference, and when he does, takes the guy's word that he left in, like, this whole thing of, oh, you left under a cloud, but you got a good reference. Mate, do you understand how the referencing system worked in that era in England? That's not how that would have gone down.
Either you're in or you're out.
Yeah, I've got to say, like, if any man's valet spoke to him the way Passepartout claimed to speak to the previous guy he worked for, it'd have been out on his ear with no reference at all if he were lucky.
I mean, yeah, it's
impertinent touch.
Yeah, I mean, the valet would have been very much to be expected to be yes, sir, no, sir, three bags
full, sir.
Yeah. Now
speak when spoken to, sort very much sort of that sort of relationship.
Now
the best servants are seen and not heard.
I picked now. Passepartout's like character arc over the novel reminded me of the character arc of another famous literary character, though this one's a fantasy character. Bilbo Baggins.
See, I thought you were going to say Dobby.
No, I was going to say Bilbo Baggins. Because, at the beginning, all he wants is a nice, quiet life. That's why he's, taking up valeting for Fogg, because Fogg has this reputation of being so precise and exact and samey.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, shit.
This dude's insane.
While Bilbo forgot to bring his handkerchief, Passepartout left the gas on in his room. And then, over the course of the novel, Passepartout, warms up to the notion of adventure again.
Yeah.
I'd like to say this is one of the ironies about the way these two characters are, that Fogg's reputation is yes, he's there in his London house. He goes as far as the club, has his set routine. Whereas Passepartout is someone who's travelled a bit and has,
even
Fogg
picked up a nickname for it. Yeah.
Is even exactly is just obviously Passepartout's name is a bit of a play on that, but you got this one character that is really Fogg should be out of his element completely on a journey like this. And Passepartout too, you would think would be the sort of person who may be a little bit more adapted for something like this. But it's kind of weird how this plays out as it goes on.
But then if you think about it, Fogg will have had an Englishman's education.
Yeah.
So he's not just had the, private school, recite your Iliad and pretend that it's something to be like that not every schoolboy has learned. Learn your Bible, take your strap to your hand when you miswrite your word, sharpen your quill with a penknife, all that jazz. Yeah. But he'll have also learned to ride, to hunt, to swim, to do all these things that were not really available to the common man in this era.
He'll have done the rich people shit.
He'd have learned the basics of fencing. He'd have learned, he'd have had dogs all his, like, if he grew up on a country estate, there'd have been hunting dogs around.
Also, for the most part, Fogg's answers to problems is money. He like the first thing Fogg ever does is go to his carpet bag.
Yeah, like he doesn't even try and to be fair, in his defense, he tries to solve problems, but then when he finds he hasn't got an answer, he understands that money opens doors.
Yeah, and I think we should probably.
He does look for alternatives first before throwing money at shit. He does. Just give him his due.
Yeah, I was going to say, and give a little bit of context, should we say, for some of the Americans, but what we mean by sort of British public schools, and that means a different thing entirely in Britain to what it means in America anyway. What we call public schools are the private schools for the upper class kind of thing. And there is a whole culture with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole culture with them that is really weird. Now, I'll just to give little divergence on this. Anyone wants a good idea of it, I actually recommend reading the autobiography of the lead singer of Iron Maiden, Bruce Dickinson, who got a private school education. And sort of like, yes, even he was like, he got interested in fencing because that was a thing they did in public schools. And then, and then, and when he was like an army cadet in the public schools, yes, let's just say he had access to real life ammunition and stuff. And it was more of a thing where they'd have to, it's a really weird culture. It really is.
It's fucking nuts. It's absolutely insane. It is very much, it's Pride and Prejudice, it's Downton Abbey, it's so weird that even the modern versions of it today are foreign to most normal people.
It's Hogwarts on acid.
Hogwarts wishes it was upper class enough. Like, slight tangent. There's a line in a Hogwarts book, in a Harry Potter book, where one of the characters says, I was going to go to Eton, but I came here instead. And my mum wanted me to go to Eton. Now, obviously, they don't say my mum because they talk like a proper upper class twit. But I'm Northern, so fuck it. And that line is really important for that character, because what you need to understand is that character will have been, from the moment he was born, basically, his name would have been down for Eton. He'd have gone to prep school. His parents are probably both really well off. When he didn't show up at Eton, his parents would have gone through, would have had to explain that away. And there would have been assumptions of a loss of money, of some kind of scandal. And that would have been something the parents socially would never recover from. He would have been expected to go to Eton, and it would have been expected that after Eton he went to somewhere like Oxford or Cambridge or St Andrews, somewhere like that. We're talking about the kind of kids that, their classroom is, it goes, a Prince, a Duke, a CEO's son. That's the line. And it's not their entire lives are just different. These are kids who aren't taught to tie their own shoelaces because they've got a servant for that. Instead, they're taught 3 languages a day and Latin.
Yeah.
Because somehow that's more useful to them in their life.
Yeah,
But,
I know.
you know, God
a
forbid
bit
you
of
to
a-
ask one of them to vacuum a floor.
Yes,
It's a bit of a bizarre dynamic.
It's
especially
really
with
bizarre.
especially
when you
with
said-
boys' public schools in particular. It's really, I mean, like there's a. Actually, no, I don't want to say the word, but because
I know what you're gonna. You want to talk about the younger boys and the older boys, don't you?
There's a and there's a term for a. It was an old British public schoolboy term for prefects that. I don't want to say it because it's also a homophobic slur, and I don't want people.
It's also a synonym for a cigarette.
Begins with F. Yes, we'll say that much. Okay.
You were saying, Sam?
Noodle, when you mentioned Hogwarts and then said "ma'am," my brain just immediately went, "My dad's a muggle. My mum's a witch."
Mum's a witch. Bit of a nasty shock for him when he found
out. And I feel like that is actually something that's not really explored in a lot of literature. Is like high class places will be referenced, like, oh, this person would have been in a high class place, but they're not. But like that has fallout on like his whole social circle.
Yeah, like it's really weird for Fogg not to have at least 2 or 3 girls he's calling on. Like he lives in London. It's October. Like, how many years has he lived in London, seen the debutantes coming down, and never picked up a wife?
If he frequents a gentleman's club and doesn't have a bird or two that he's flirting with, then
ain't right, you know. And that's why it's really surprising to me, knowing about the history of that era, reading the first half of first 95% of this book. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Literally, I just assumed it was gay. So, you know, the ending came a bit out of nowhere for me.
I just want to say one more thing about it, because I know we do need to move on a bit with this. But, I mean, this is the thing, that even if he was someone who was just genuinely kind of content, being by himself and doing his own thing, and not wanting a relationship or whatever,
still be
whatever
expected
his
to have a wife.
sexuality. Yes, there would have been a social expectation on someone of his status to be married to a good wife, shall we say?
An upper class young lady.
Yes. Which he's clearly not really living up to. And, this would have been a social expectation of somebody like Fogg in England at the time.
So,
it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife.
Yeah. But so. Well, we'll get moving along as the plot does, and it turns out that the Bank of England has been robbed.
Listen. Good on the robber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They literally print money. It makes no difference to them. It would have literally made no difference to them. They literally print money at the Bank of England. It's called quantitative easing. Google it.
Yeah.
I just... The idea of the Bank of England being robbed is just... It's kind of ridiculous.
Comical.
There's a reason it's a plot in, like, Pirates of the Caribbean and Jackie Chan movies. There's been, like, 3 Jackie Chan movies where it's a central part of the plot. And that should tell you everything. There's a plot in the Shanghai Nights. It was a plot in Around the World in 80 Days. And there's another one.
I'll quote something from another famous comedy movie called The Italian Job. Tell Mr. Bridger that this job is big. Well, if it's the Bank of England, Charlie, it's out. Mr. Bridger is rather concerned about the economy.
Yeah, it's just it is utterly, it's a ludicrous proposition to rob the Bank of England. All you're going to walk away with is an old monocle and someone's fountain pen. Now, granted, those people all use quite expensive fountain pens, so you might get a couple of grand out of it, but you know, there's a reason they're all chained down.
And of course, it's the discussion about where the robber might have gone, which leads into the bet.
The discussion's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's certainly something, isn't it?
It's very contrived.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen some clunky inciting incidents. I've played in some pretty clunky inciting incidents in D&D games, but holy shit.
Yeah, there's you all meet in a tavern, and then there's
you all meet in a tavern, and a gremlin in red lipstick approaches you and offers you 10,000 gold to go. It's clunky. It really is. But it's quite clearly designed to set the scene. That aside, is designed to set the scene and designed to really. You know, when you write an essay and you're told write an introductory sentence, then your paragraph, then finish your paragraph, then it sets up a structure for this book that is almost, it borderline ruins it, because it's just so, it leaves nothing to the surprise or expectation. Like, we already know what the outcome's going to be. It's how it happens. It's a bit like an episode of Columbo where you see the murder at the beginning, and the mystery isn't who did the killing. The mystery is how Columbo figures it out.
Yeah.
That's what it is here. It's like, we know the outcome. It's like, how's
I feel like
I feel like one more thing.
Yeah, just one more thing.
Yeah.
I feel like it's very much the case that, like, with that sort of thing, it's on thin ice. But, like, with a more casual read, it certainly reads okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, with a casual read, it's okay, but the film's also very... The book's also very repetitive. I don't know why I keep calling it film. I think it's because I listen to it on audiobook.
Yeah. And we often discuss films there, don't we, so?
Yeah. It's just really repetitive in its structure. It's a very obvious... I would be hard-pressed to believe that Verne didn't write this book with a view to putting it on stage at some point.
That makes sense.
Because the scene changes, and the descriptions of the scenes and the dialogue, it's very dramatic. It's more theatrical than literary.
Well, I mean, that's just kind of Verne's style, because the reason I didn't pick 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea for Verne is because you might as well just watch a Jacques Cousteau documentary.
Yeah. I'll actually say, with what was just said there, I actually went to see like a play of this around the world in 80 days. It was a play stroke semi-musical that was going around when I was a kid. And weirdly enough, it was something I was taken to see as part of a school thing. And I think this is one of the first time we kind of did, we were looking at the book Around the World in 80 Days. And I'll just say the only context we had for Around the World in 80 Days was there was a cartoon out at the time called Around the World with Willy Fogg, which was loosely based on Around the World in 80 Days, with a few little tweaks and plots. And Like they added a character in there that one of the people who had bet with Fogg, he's hired someone to try and sabotage Fogg's journey, which obviously is not in the book.
Yeah. So,
but mate.
So I'm gonna put a pin in that.
There's just one other thing I want to add before we move on.
We could get on to adaptations a bit later, I think. Yeah.
About just something that immediately to me flagged the class of character we're dealing with.
Yeah.
The newspaper they pick up when they're arranging the wager is the Daily Telegraph.
Telegraph, yeah.
Yep.
The Tory graph.
The Tory graph, yeah.
Yeah.
It is the quintessential old boy paper.
Yeah. You know, the British Chancellor of the Exchequer reads the Daily Telegraph and the Financial Times.
And of course, it's the Telegraph that informed his math.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a quote from a show called Yes, Minister. Just explain British newspapers.
Hang on, let me find it.
And there's the Daily Telegraph is read by people who.
Wait, I've got it here.
Find that? Yeah.
It's hang on. The Daily Mirror is read by people who think they run the country. The Guardian is read by people who think they ought to run the country. The Times is read by the people who actually run the country, and the Daily Mail is read by the wives of the people who run the country. The Financial Times is read by the people who own the country. The Morning Star is read by the people who think the country ought to be run by another country. And the Daily Telegraph is read by people who think it is. And what about the people who read the Sun? Sun readers don't care who runs the country as long as she's got big tits.
British newspapers explain brilliantly in one.
In a nutshell.
I thought the Telegraph was mentioned in that quote. It wasn't, was it? But
the Telegraph is read by people who think it's run by another country. But there's a joke about sun readers in Britain. Do you know the joke about sun readers? How you can always tell a sun reader?
How?
Sun readers have got thick lips and black fingers. We always catch them going. One
quick joke about newspaper readers. There's a capitalist, an immigrant, and a Daily Mail reader, sitting in a waiting room, and there's a tray of biscuits brought out. There was 8 biscuits on the tray. The capitalist takes 8 of them, then turns to the Daily Mail reader and says, "Look out for that! Look, watch out for that immigrant. He's trying to take your biscuit."
Yeah.
Takes 7 and tells, "Watch out for that immigrant. He's trying to take your biscuit." Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Fogg goes on his journey for the wager, and the narrative remains in England for 1 chapter, which I actually kind of love.
Go on.
Because it's basically a chapter describing the stir that the news of Fogg's wager has riled in London, and it's basically a caricature of the South Seas bubble, where people are so caught up in wagering on whether or not Fogg will make it that Fogg bonds become their own currency.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great little.
That was something I'd forgot about, actually.
Yeah. It's a great. I mean, at one point, the South Seas Company was worth more than all the money in England combined.
Yeah.
Talk about too big to fail, 2008. But yeah, the idea of a Fogg Bond is just hilarious to me.
Yeah.
We all know the story of the South Seas Company. If you don't, strongly recommend the video by Overly Sarcastic Productions on it. Blue did a video on it. It's a really good introduction overview of it.
Yeah.
Or if you want to go back, or again, too big to fail, you want to go back far enough, Bearings Bank. You want to go back far enough as well.
Northern Rock, although that did fail in the end. The Great Depression.
Yeah.
Wall Street. We all know the story. You know, these companies that are worth more than all the money in the world, and yet somehow they can still grow in, you know.
Enron.
Imagine if the US based its currency on the value of an iPhone.
And then it ends with, you know, people kind of turning away because, like, certain accusation has come to light that casts aspersions on the wager, and we only have one gentleman left who's willing to bet on Fogg, because he figures if someone's gonna go around the world in 80 days, it ought to be an Englishman who does it first.
Yeah. And the thing is, if anyone's going to do it, it is Fogg.
Yeah.
Because when you sit down and you look at that journey at the time, it was by the skin of his teeth.
Yeah.
It was next to impossible, but...
Yeah, even when Verne was writing this in the 1870s, that journey was nigh on impossible. Yeah,
I mean, there were some genuine inspiration, like real life inspirations for this book. With people who had hypothesized about the times that it would take to travel the world around the world theoretically, and I mean, even I believe Phileas Fogg is actually. The name was actually given up is a tribute to an American guy called Fogg, I believe, who was an explorer or something. From my memory,
there was an explorer with a similar name.
And I think that was I do think that was a little nod to this guy by Jules Verne.
See, I thought it was just a London pun.
Ring, I need you to put this on screen so I can clarify something. The words bloody hell are not inappropriate for anyone over the age of about 2.5 if you know the Watford Gap. They're normal.
Are they really saying mild bad language, bloody hell?
It's bad language, yeah.
It's because in different...
only bad language when Americans try and say it.
This is true. This is true.
My part of the country, that's bad language up until the age of 8. So we're a bit different down my part of the country.
Yeah, but if you remove the words bloody hell from the vocabulary of people in my part of the country, we've got no else to say.
Yeah. So we come to Cairo. And we meet the, for lack of a better term, he definitely serves as an antagonist for the first half of the novel.
He's the thing is, he's the Indiana Jones in sort of certain films whereby he's entirely irrelevant to the plot.
Yeah.
He's a mild irritant, Is
this Fix, by the way?
Yes. This is Detective Fix.
Yeah.
I can see why later adaptations gave him more firepower.
I think the thing with Fix is that there's so much that character could have done to drive conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we see it like I said, in the modern adaptations where he involves himself in one adaptation with the Chinese mafia. And, his actual goal is to stop Fogg completely. This character is more realistic in his motives. He's a lawful character, above all the law.
And the thing is, he is motivated because he genuinely believes Fogg is responsible, or is obviously is the prime suspect in this robbery of the Bank of England, and Fix. So you can maybe argue that his motives are they're quite genuine. He wants to see him brought to justice.
The question is how much of his motives is seeing that justice done, and how much is the massive financial reward.
Well, the financial reward is what, £2,000, which
that would have been a lot of money then.
In today's money, it's got to be, if 20,000's 170, it's got to be 20 grand.
Yeah,
it's got to be 200 grand, $250,000.
Okay, well, bear in mind, Fogg's bet is for 20,000. And we said, what was that, about 1.7 million? So we're talking about
divide that by 10.
£170,000.
Yeah,
a lot of money. Lot of money.
Yeah, easily enough.
Like buying a house money.
Let's put it this way. In those days, you could have bought a house in London for that kind of money.
Yeah.
And I mean a house, not a garden or a shed.
Yeah, it was like 2,000 and then plus a certain percentage of funds recovered.
5%, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas,
and it was £50,000 that was stolen.
Which would have been in the region of about 5 million today's money.
Yeah.
Which, to give a little context, a little joke I heard earlier today, actually. I think it was Mark Steele on Twitter who said something like this about, do you remember this young British tennis player who's just won the US Open?
So I was just about to make this joke.
She's something like she's won something like around $2 million or something. And Mark Steele says, well, she only needs to win one more tournament of that and she can afford a flat in London.
Yeah. Or the other joke is someone said she can afford a flat in London. And they said now with that kind of money, she'll have to settle for somewhere in Devon.
You could buy a flat in London if you had someone else with the same money.
Yeah, you'd have to flat share.
Yeah.
Though, to be fair, with polygamy on the rise and queer platonic relationships and things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm perfectly happy living with another couple we ring in the same house.
Valid.
So
oh dear, that wouldn't end well for me. Having my partners all in the same house.
Well, if you've got 4 people in the house who are working, does that make you a quink? As in Parker Inc. Does that make you quink?
So, anything else?
Noodle.
So, anything else to say about Fix, or do we want to hang on to that for later?
Let's hang on to Fix for later, because I think for me, Fix is of the tradition of the bumbling English detective.
Yeah.
He's a lot less Sherlock Holmes and a bit more
Lestrade.
Yeah, he's a bit more Lestrade. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, Lestrade's probably a better comparison than Clouseau, I'd say. But
well, Clouseau's French, so.
Yeah. Well, but.
Okay. So in that case, we're going to move to India.
Oh boy.
We're going to move to casual Victorian racism.
Okay, it's a good job I just cracked open a fresh drink, so I'm going to need another one after this bit.
Oh dear. We just need a counter for like cinema sins or whatever when we get an eye roll collectively.
Right.
My memories.
Where's my notebook?
But I do remember this being pretty bad.
Yeah.
First of all, there's a comment that was passed in this book that I want to bring right to the front. That, dear Brits, it is not the rest of the world's fault that you people have stomachs like cotton wool. Okay?
Yep.
When he's told, you're probably better off asking what not to eat in India. That's a reference to what's casually known in the UK as Delhi belly. The idea being you go to India and after 2 days you get the trots.
Yeah.
Now, I've never been to India, so I don't know how true that is. I would presume that the things have moved on, especially in the big cities. I would hope the water's clean and yada yada yada.
I will just say that when I went to Peru in 2018, even some of the Peruvian people on our tours were saying, to us, the English, probably best you avoid the street food.
Yeah. Because English have got a reputation worldwide of not being able to take spice and having weak stomachs.
Well, let's. So I mean, here's the thing. I think I mentioned I walked the Inca Trail in 2015, and I went for and I, in my infinite wisdom, went for a curry in Peru the night before we went on this trip. It's like, I'll go for a chicken vindaloo before I go the one night before I go on a day where there's probably no toilet in sight for 4 days. What can possibly go wrong?
Right, Ring. You've seen the episode of Top Gear where they go to India.
Yeah.
The reputation British people have is basically being Richard Hammond. Now, yes, there are things about, there's still to this day, there's travel advisories of don't drink the water from the taps, things like that in certain countries.
Yeah.
But that's not India's fault. And the thing is, you've got to understand, curry didn't start out as a dish that was made so you could taste all the spices. Curry started out like saltfish in the Caribbean. It was a way of preserving the meat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And hiding if the meat was starting to turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it became a thing in Britain. In
soldiers brought it back, didn't they?
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of there's some historical arguments about how true that is, but actually, even before this book was set, to say that one of the first curry houses, to say, in England was one of the sort of late 18th century coffee houses, and introduced this Indian dish as a sort of as a novelty, and it became very popular. So yeah, let's just put it this way: by the time this novel was set, curry houses would have existed in the UK.
Yeah. Not to the extent they existed after the Windrush generation arrived, but they were definitely a thing.
Yeah.
But you have to understand as well, when Scummer talks about coffee houses in the 1800s, it's like we talk about coffee shops in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
As per what's on the menu.
And they were a bit let's put it this way. People like Phileas Fogg would have been patronising those places.
Yeah, they weren't the kind of places that whelps like you and me went to. We wouldn't have had a clue what coffee was. We'd have drunk water and been grateful for it.
Drunk water or drunk beer probably and been...
Probably beer. Corporation Pop.
Joke's on you. I'm a Yank. Soldiers in the Civil War had coffee.
Yeah, that's because the water was so bad you couldn't drink it.
Only because you fuckers owe us 250 years of back taxes on tea.
Yeah, plus you wasted all the tea. You threw it away, for Christ's sake.
So
we get to India.
Yeah, they land in Bombay.
And I will say, as someone who's British, I don't know about the other two Brits in the conversation. For me, when I talk about Delhi Belly, that's affectionate. It's not meant with any malice anymore. It is kind of affectionate, and it's kind of a self-awareness that Brits can't really take foreign food.
Yeah.
It's kind of a bit of a dig at ourselves more than anything else.
Let's put it this way: it's
not at me personally, because I can't.
It's not a fucking racist remark at all for anyone who's watching this. It's not. You might just get they're being racist against Indian people by saying Delhi. No, it's not meant that way at all.
No, what it's
it-
meant
it is
as
very-
is we go there and his
Yeah.
bellies stay here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can take spice better than most of my family. Equally, I'm well aware that a mild Indian dish is gonna fuck me over.
Yeah, pretty much the only racism coming in here is from Jules Verne.
Yeah.
And we do have to point out the French colonial history here. For more information on that, go watch the year and a half of Asterix Scummer and I did.
Yeah.
And to point out that the stuff that Noodle and I covered for over a year is written like 130 to 150 years after Jules Verne. Kind of says a bit about
the French.
About a lack
Yeah.
of progress, perhaps.
Yeah, if we're being racist against
Yeah.
anyone, it's against the French, but they can take it. They used to lose it.
Yeah.
I'd actually argue
Everyone hates the French.
if you are going to make comparisons between Jules Verne and some of the Asterix books, I'd say things have gone backwards.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Jules Verne was refreshingly not racist about Egypt in a way that the Asterix books really were.
Yep.
You know, what a nose.
Yeah.
I will admit, though, I had to chuckle at that, the nose thing with Cleopatra. That was quite funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's quite clearly based off the actual
most
story.
disliked French, followed by the English.
Yeah.
The only reason the French are more disliked than the English is because the English also dislike the French.
Yep.
Though to be fair, I don't think the French are that keen on us either.
No,
well,
no.
I mean, look at the 1790s. The French weren't too keen on the French either.
Yeah, I was half tempted to say the French and the English are not fond of themselves either. So
yeah, I mean, to be fair, when you've had a civil war in your country, you're not allowed to claim to be unified in your opinion of any other country.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, we get to India and.
So first off, Passepartout gets in a bit of trouble.
Okay, listen. India was a British colony. There would have been signs plastered up all over the shop. And if you are rich enough to be able to travel from Britain to the UK, you're rich enough to know how to fucking read.
From Britain to the UK. Yes.
From Britain to India, even.
Yeah.
Look, I'm tired. It's been a long week, okay? And now I have to discuss racism. But yeah, plus dyslexia. But this whole thing of him walking into a temple with his shoes on,
he should have known.
What really annoyed me about this whole thing is not the fact that he did it, which is an easy mistake to make for a tourist. I went to Tunisia a few years ago, and I was really female traveling alone in a Muslim country, and I wanted to see the sights and the mosques and things. And I was asking my taxi driver, do I have to wear a headscarf? Should I wear a shawl? It's 45 degrees in the shade, and I'm asking if I should wear a shawl.
Yeah.
And I'm already wearing a white blouse, because I want to make sure that I'm not being disrespectful. So, Passepartout's faux pas, as it were, I can kind of understand to an extent, because those buildings are beautiful and you will get caught up in looking at them. But yeah, just slip your shoes off first. There's actually usually shoe spots at the front of them. Don't wear socks. It's just easier that way. And that I can understand. What really got my goat about this whole little subplot was the belief, and I say belief because there's no fucking way it was real, that the British government gave a flying fuck about any disrespect shown to a Hindu temple.
Yeah.
They would not have given a shit. Like, them caring that Passepartout walked in there with shoes is the equivalent of the Romans giving a shit about Jesus preaching in the streets.
Yeah.
They don't care. It's not their problem.
British Museum says what?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's put it this way. When was this book written? 1872. That's like
yeah.
It's less than 20 years from the so-called what the British called the Indian Mutiny, and bear in mind that one of the trigger points for that was asking the Indian soldiers to use gun cartridges that have been greased in with both or sort of fat
wasn't it?
and beef and pigs. So they both offend Hindus and Muslims in one go there.
Look, even in modern day, it's very difficult to offend Hindus and Muslims in the same sentence. You're going to offend one or the other 90% of the time. The fact that the British
then
managed
it's probably
to do
not the
both,
Hindus.
Yeah, and even then it's probably not the Hindus. Let's be clear about this. But basically, don't go to India and expect to find a McDonald's serving you a bacon cheeseburger, okay? That's the only other way you could possibly offend both those religions at the same time.
Yeah. Alternatively, going out of your way to serve Indian guests bacon butties.
To be fair, Indian guests aren't going to give a shit about bacon butties. That's Muslim guests.
Fair.
Yeah.
And to be fair, my grandfather was Hindu, and you prize, shepherd's pie out of his cold dead hands.
Actually, that tracks.
So.
Yeah. So Passepartout buys some new fancy slippers, and they get on the train.
The slippers are funny.
Yeah.
I just want to point this out. He quite clearly buys women's slippers. Covered in pearls and gold and made of silk.
Yeah.
So, are we sure that this whole trip wasn't just like a confirmed bachelor honeymoon?
Exactly. And not only that, he pays well over the odds for him because he pays for him right by the boat. Dear tourists, a clue. If you pull into anywhere on a boat, walk for at least half a mile away from the port before you start looking for souvenirs.
Yeah, walk 20 minutes.
The prices will drop. It's like, I'll give you a perfect example. I was in Rome. There is a gelato shop right outside the entrance to the Vatican. The back entrance where you're going into the trap and you're going inside. It's a trap. The gelato there is like €7 a scoop. I'm not even joking. Because I took one look at it. I'll tell you what, it was so expensive that a bottle of Coke, because it had the price printed on it of €1.99, was cheaper than a bottle of water that was €3.50 for a bottle of
If you're in Rome and you want some decent gelato, go and try and find the oldest gelato place in Rome.
The only decent gelato place I can say that actually doesn't take too much rip out of tourists in Rome, as you're looking at the Trevi Fountain, straight on your right, on the corner, there's a gelato place. It's an open front place.
Oh, I went to that one, actually.
Yeah, everyone's been at that one.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the one little touristy thing I got ripped. I didn't even realise I got ripped off with it because it was and again, this was in Peru. I bought some coca leaves for my, should we say, mountain expedition.
Altitude sickness.
For altitude sickness. And I paid five sols, which is like, I don't know, about £1, to be honest. And then when I told the Peruvian tour guys what I paid for it, was like, you got fucking ripped off.
What you have to understand,
I spent £1 on coca leaves, and he's like, yeah, it really. He said, yeah, most of us could get it for about like what would be the equivalent of 20p.
Yeah. What you have to understand is two things. First of all, if you're a tourist and you're willing to pay the price, you weren't ripped off. The locals have got to make a living.
Yeah.
Second of all, the coca leaves that Scummer was buying, if they are the ones I think they are actually, they're not coca leaves as in chocolate leaves. They're coca leaves as in cocaine leaves.
Exactly.
And they are taken by the locals for altitude sickness. It's a thing. And they are totally illegal and, above board. Just to make sure I'm special branch don't knock on your door.
They're legal and above board in Peru. Let's put it this way. I couldn't take them back to the UK, and I ended up giving up. I had half a bag left by the time I was done, and sort of was like, had to give it to the tour guides and say, hey, you guys.
I mean, in fairness,
did they make you talk, Scummer?
So,
in fairness, handing 50 pence of that stuff over to the tour guide can't have been that big of a hardship.
Yeah. But yeah, always tip your tour guide, folks. They don't make a lot of money.
And I will just say, chewing on coca leaves is not the same as snorting a line. Let's put it that way. It's nowhere near as
valid.
So
also tip your tour guides. They're the ones who can throw you off a cliff.
They're also the ones who can tell you some bullshit you'll embarrass yourself about if you don't tip them when you get back to England. Just been there, done that. I watched one tour guide genuinely stand there and tell Americans that they had managed to fill that they had just missed the previous day when someone had filled the Colosseum in with water to try and land back, when this American believed it. And I was just like...
Well, I'll actually...
okay. I tipped that tour guide extra that day.
quick story before we get back on what we're supposed to be talking about then. But it's about tourist traps, okay? A friend of mine went to America and went to Gettysburg, to the battlefield there, and it's some American guy tried to sell him a sword which he claimed was the sword that Stonewall Jackson had whilst he was at the Battle of Gettysburg. The problem for this American is my friend knew his history a little bit and said, wow,
Stonewall Jackson wasn't.
Stonewall Jackson had this sword at Gettysburg. Says, that's a fucking miracle considering he was killed at Chancellorsville, which happened before Gettysburg.
Like, I bet that tour guide was like, shit, the one tourist who knows his stuff.
Yeah, I watched someone when I was at Pompeii arguing with this guy outside Pompeii trying to buy a coin. They didn't speak Italian and the tour guide didn't speak English. Arguing with the guy, trying to find out if the coin was real, that they were buying, like was a real Roman coin. And I'm just stood there watching them and I'm just like, you do understand that it's illegal to take real ancient artifacts out of Italy, right? Like, you're asking him if he's breaking the law by selling you that. And I watched them for 20 minutes. And then they paid something stupid like 25 euros for this fake copper coin.
Really?
I walked up to the same guy and bought a copper coin. It was a copy of a Septimus coin. I bought the same coin for 3 euros.
Anyway, I think we've gotten off
They're not
track
dumb.
here, so I don't ring wants to get us back on track here because
the reason I brought that up is haggling as a tourist, which we see the Indians try and talk Fogg into a lot. Now, you can have two approaches as a tourist. You can be a skinflint and you can haggle every penny. Or you can do what Fogg does and go, you know what, fuck it, I'm on holiday here. Take the price you're asking.
Yeah.
Pay the asking price. It don't mean shit to you. You're on holiday. That money's gone. You're only going to drink it in beer.
Okay,
just pay the asking price.
Yeah, and we could posit this that even if Fogg knows obviously that he is at risk of losing at least half his fortune, and he's spending the other half on this trip. Do you reckon he gets into a certain mindset of all
or nothing in it?
Fuck if it ruins me, I'm having the adventure of my life.
I genuinely think that was the mentality. That does track.
Yeah.
Because it's
I'm
kind
gonna
of
have to duck out.
fuck it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Sam.
Is
But yeah, it is very much, he kind of looks at it and goes, I've got two options. I can either be a skinflint and definitely lose, or I can pay what people are asking or over the odds, because he does offer way over the odds.
Yeah.
And he's the one upping the price. Until they'll accept it. So the guy clearly doesn't know the first thing about haggling. Insert Life of Brian joke here.
Come on, haggle.
Haggle? This? 5 for this, it ain't worth 3. But you just told me it was worth 10.
Yeah.
You know? But as a tourist, he's got the right idea. I'm a great believer. If you go to a country, especially where you know their economy's fucked compared to the one you've come from,
yeah,
your money is worth to them far more than just money. You pay someone who's selling something on the side of the road over the odds. What are they going to do with that? They're going to send their child to school. They're going to buy their daughter new shoes. They're going to buy their son a new coat. They're going to buy their mother a bunch of flowers. They're why is that bad thing? You know? Yeah. So just pay the damn asking price. And if you don't like the asking price, say no and walk away. But don't stand there and waste the time.
I'll say this. Pay the ask. If you can afford to pay the asking price, pay it. Because like I said, with those coca leaves things, yes, I found out I got overcharged.
But it was like for fuck's sake.
It was a quid. It was £1. It makes no difference to my. I've paid more than that for this for what I'm drinking.
Yeah,
I've paid way more than that for what I'm drinking now. It's no skin off my nose. And hey, if it just helps the locals out a bit, who am I? Because if it's it's a bit more money to them.
I do it when I'm not in Britain. I tip like an American. It's crazy.
And
I've had Americans genuinely say to me when I'm on holiday, "You tip too much."
Yeah.
I'm just like, hold on.
Sorry, where have we gotten to here? Because I think we need to get back
on
track
India.
here. But...
Yeah, we're in India. So Fogg and Passepartout are on the train, and it turns out that the telegraph was wrong, and the train and the railway hadn't been completed.
Yeah.
Shocker. I feel like the telegraph probably ran a headline about 3 years ago saying H2 was finished.
Yeah.
And that's the equivalent. Or I feel like they should have done if they didn't, because that would have been nice and ironic.
Basically, the Telegraph's the opposite of the Daily Express, where it's reporting stuff's being done that hasn't been done yet, where the Daily Express is still running stories about Princess Diana, 25 years later, sort of thing.
Yeah, 24 years later. I feel old. Damn it, Scummer.
And so Fogg has to get another means of transportation to make the link to the rest of the railroad. So he buys an elephant.
And again, we have the quote unquote a greedy Indian stereotype. Which, again, you're a tourist, pay the price.
Yeah.
When the exchange rate is what is a pint to you is a week's wages for them. It's bloody ridiculous. I went, again, as an example, I went to Tunisia. I was there for 9 days. I spent less than £600 total while I was there. I spent more on flights and hotel than anything else while I was there, because the exchange rate was something stupid like 40 to 1.
Yeah.
Pay the damn asking price. And that elephant, it's probably his entire livelihood and everything else. Yeah. Now there is there's a joke in that. Does anyone know the why a white elephant is both a blessing and a curse. Does anyone know what? Yeah.
I don't know this one. No, please tell me.
So the idea is you give a gift of a white elephant, and it's supposed to be a gift that you give to show respect and love. It's a diplomatic gift. But what you're actually giving them is X number of years of shoveling shit and paying a lot of money for food. So it's it's a curse disguised as a blessing. So I can see why the guy wanted rid of the elephant and was ready to sell it to the circus.
Yeah, because he wouldn't rent it. He would only sell it.
Yeah, exactly, because he wanted rid of it. So that's quite clearly what's going on there to anyone who knows about that particular joke.
So is it now? Refresh my memories. Is it around about this point in the story where they have to rescue the woman who comes?
Which is why I've
Yeah.
still got the casual Victorian racism banner up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the thugs.
Yeah.
And their
Right.
ritual and the description. I had to go back and listen to this twice because I couldn't quite believe what I was hearing. And the description of the statue of Kali. Now, I appreciate if you're white and you've not had a lot of exposure to foreign cultures, it's a frightening image. It's a woman with 4 arms and green lips and, bright blue skin or bright yellow skin, whatever else. It's frightening. However, there is no fucking excuse for describing it with that lack of respect. You don't know what you're describing. You don't know what you're invoking. Now, as someone who's polytheist, that freaked me. That I was just like, that utter lack of respect. It's not so much casual Victorian racism as it is. It goes even further than that, and it uses the casual Victorian racism as a plot point.
Yeah.
And now again, my memories of this book are sketchy, but I believe it's what's the word, sati, or what's the word they used that sacrificing a widow or something. Which apparently was a thing, but nothing. It was a historical thing, but nothing like what was described in this book.
Yeah, nothing like as widespread as they made out.
Fogg was a legitimate. This is the Fogg were a legitimate criminal cult, should we say? Probably like an Indian mafia, you could possibly argue. They're a mix between a cult and an organized crime family would be the best word to describe Fogg. But from what I've read of them, their general MO was more about murdering travelers who were in convoys and so on, and robbing them. That was their general MO.
They were cowboys of India, basically.
Yeah, it was not. It was. I don't think they necessarily performed human sacrifice for the sake of it, shall we say? But they would murder people in a. You could argue somewhat ritualistic way of strangling, but it was more of a strangle someone in the night, bury them, rob what they had, and be on their way. It's kind of my understanding of Fogg.
Sati is a thing, but this book claimed that the British had tried to stamp Sati out in the 1860s. It wasn't until 1987 that an act of parliament in India, actually, the enactment was passed in 1988 to prevent it, which is the voluntary or forced burning or burying alive of a widow and to prohibit glorification of this action through observance of any ceremony, participation in procession, creation of financial trust, construction of temple, or action to commemorate or honour the memory of a widow who committed it.
Yeah.
It was first banned under Bengal Sati Regulation 1892. Okay, so it was banned in the 1800s, but it was still a problem up until the 1980s. So this claim that the British had got rid of it, no.
Now, I think Verne's
propaganda there.
And I think Jules Verne's probably conflated a couple of things here, and I think probably you've got to bear in mind this is probably an era. I'm not making an apologetic for Verne here, but I think this is probably an era when a lot of people in, say, Europe probably believed a lot of these stories that they heard out of India about this sort of practice, and would link stuff like Sati and Fogg as being one in this. Would probably make those links. Now, the British, there was one guy. God damn, is it? I think it's William Henry Schliemann, I think his name was, who was a British officer who was actually, I got to say, was a little bit unlike a lot of the British officers who went to India. That he actually grew to have a lot of respect and admiration for India and its culture and heritage. But I'd heard all the stories about Fogg and the things they did, and made it kind of his mission to eradicate the Fogg from India. And I guess that's and he near enough completed it. Now, there's a lot of arguments that he probably went too far on certain things, but there is even a town in India named after him. It's called Shlimanabad, I think it's called. And he's quite well respected in India to this day for his efforts in stamping out Fogg.
I will say, Fogg and Sati. The Fogg were known for approaching travellers, befriending them, and then basically robbing them and killing them and burying them. They were known for that. They were also known separately as being a cult dedicated to Kali. Sati is a rite or ritual dedicated to Kali as the goddess of death. I can completely understand why in the 1800s, when the only sources you've got are propaganda coming out of India, the only English-speaking sources at least, why you would conflate those three things into this kind of plot.
And
I can completely understand
why. And again, I'm not necessarily making excuses for
so
Jules
not an
Verne
excuse, but an explanation.
I can understand why he thought this was a genuine thing that actually happened. And we've had myths about Fogg going up, even up to like the 1980s in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. If anyone's watched that film, that cult that are in the mountain or whatever are supposed to be like the descendants of the Fogg, and which, of course, hey, everyone knows that this is where we get the English word "fug" from, is from Fogg. But yeah, anyway, I think we've kind of done Fogg to death a little bit here. So
there's something else I want to point out as well. There's a comment passed by the young man who they hired to ride the elephant, where they're discussing about whether they're going to rescue this woman or not. And the young man says, she is Farsi. Is it Farsi? She is Farsi.
No, yeah.
Parsi. Yeah.
Or maybe Punjabi.
No, it's not Punjabi. It's not. She's Farsi, so I'm Farsi. Therefore, I will help you. And it's a very subtle hint at the way tribal loyalties work and the way the caste system works and certain things worked in India pre-colonialism.
Yeah.
And under colonialism as well, under colonial rule. But it cheapens what that young boy did.
Yeah.
It's the equivalent of you and I ring, let's say, going on holiday to some out of the way backwater place with like no telephones or anything, being in the middle of a jungle and finding, you know, an American person injured on the side of the road, and me saying, come on, let's help them, and you saying, well, I'm American and they're American, so I'll help them.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason for doing it. It makes a lot of assumptions about the way tribal politics works, and it makes a lot of assumptions about possibly the difference between Fogg's motives, which are entirely honourable and English and all this, and the young man's motives where he has to have a reason to join in.
Well,
which really irritated me.
Also, another yikesy bit is that they're, you know, the Farsi are being described as the most, you know, European of the Indians, and thus the most civilized.
Yeah. There is a massive conflation between European normativity and civilization in this story.
Yeah.
There's a long description of the train going across the continent about how it was driven by an English driver and it was an English locomotive going through the wilds of India where there were tigers and wild animals and all this, and it's just like, dude, could just wave your Union flag and stick it up your jacksie and be done with it. It's really that was painful to read.
Yeah.
Well, listen to in my case.
And so Fogg and co, along with a British officer that they picked up on the railroad.
It's because British officers are entirely honourable and will always do all they can to help any lady in distress.
Yeah. You know, all crashed the Sadie.
I have a question to ask. They were told that this woman they're rescuing is a proper lady.
Yeah.
Is upper class and everything else. Do you think they'd have bothered to rescue her if she'd have just been another poor Indian woman? Who didn't speak English and wasn't all proper on her manners and who didn't play whist?
Jules Verne wouldn't have written her into the story otherwise.
So what you're saying is Jules Verne would have never written a character who didn't play into English stereotypes of civilization?
Probably not.
Yeah, I think
having read as much as I have of The Mysterious Island, yes.
Yeah, I think obviously she's included as an eventual love interest for Fogg.
Yeah.
And I kind of almost feel that I kind of feel almost like, yes, you know, like, yes, they had to sort of make her an educated, should we say, intellectual match for Fogg in a certain way.
He also had to make her socially acceptable when he takes her back to London and introduces the darkie he's going to marry. Let's be clear here.
As I say, because you can imagine, you know.
And I can say that because I'm part Indian and I've been called that shit.
Yeah, and you could probably imagine that whatever things like you're marrying what insert racist slur kind of thing.
In 2014,
they'd have to make her someone who's of a certain class in India, where it would be socially acceptable for him to be with this person.
Let me tell you something. As someone who's dark-skinned, married to a white person, racists don't give a shit about that, but they may be given the opportunity to open their eyes, which is why it was so important she was educated. Because let me tell you something. In 2014 in America, I faced racist microaggressions and sometimes outright racism for being in a relationship with Rin. So, I'm not exactly African American. I'm not black. I'm Jamaican Indian mixed.
No, and honestly, and honestly, a lot of people could probably just come on, just listen to your accent and see. They think you are probably just think you're
white.
Yeah, white. You
look like a white person who's just been on holiday, and that's about it.
You're still a Yorkshire lass to me, Noodle.
Yeah.
So you'll always be a Yorkshire lass to me.
I'll always be a Yorkshire lass, but I'll always just be also. I'll never be white. I'll never be British. There's a reason I've got no love for this country. And it's not because of politics or anything else. It's the fact that I have never in my life been in a situation where I genuinely feel welcome in this country. And I say that as someone who was born here. I live literally less than 5 miles away from the hospital I was born in. Racism's a thing.
Yeah. You just need to sing One Britain, One Nation enough times, Noodle. You'll get fake it till you make it.
Fake it till I make it, yeah.
So, anything else we want to say about this particular section?
I think we've done this one to death, personally.
I will say...
Noodle's got something to say.
Fogg, for me... Fogg is a character, for me, surprisingly progressive.
Yeah.
He takes people as he finds them, and he doesn't really judge them on who they are. The way Verne characterizes them and writes them is a totally different kettle of fish. But Fogg as a character is, is very sort of, he just takes people as he finds them. Until he gets to the Americans and starts calling people Yankees randomly.
Yeah.
Fogg.
Well, we'll get there.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we're working our way towards America.
But other than that, he's open-minded and he's reasonable with these people. And he doesn't patronize them, which is really nice to see from a book from this era. He fully appreciates that these people are intelligent human beings who may or may not be taking him for a ride because they know he's got money in his pocket. But he don't care. But he's not patronizing at any point. Or if he is, it's so minor, it skates under the radar.
Yeah,
he never assumes these people can't count. He never assumes they can't read. He never assumes he's better than them. He never assumes he's more intelligent than them. He never assumes he can pull one over on them or anything like that. He's just a straight up guy, salt of the earth kind of guy.
And this is the thing I remember from. And again, I said my memory of this is quite sketchy because it's been over 20 years since I've read this book. But I do remember, even though in a lot of respects, Fogg is the kind of character I probably shouldn't like being this upper class English twit in a certain way. I kind of ended up liking him. When from what I remember as I read through this book, I kind of ended up liking this guy for that reason. That I think he in a lot of ways he's the ideal of what the English gentleman is supposed to be, rather than what the actual English gentleman really is. But he's
what I liked as well, Fogg's exchange rate, Fogg's internal exchange rate of what things were worth didn't change depending on who he was dealing with. Like, he didn't offer the Indian people less money because they were Indian than he would have offered an American or anything else. So in that sense, that's what I mean by he's almost not racist and likable. He takes people as he finds them. Like, for me, I kind of, reading this and growing to like Fogg, it's how I imagine proper socialists felt in 1997 having to vote for Blair. Like, I like him, but do I really like him? Like, I feel like I shouldn't like him.
and then come to find out we didn't like him.
Definitely didn't like him. But what can you do?
That's the thing about Verne's work is all of his characters, of the books that I can remember vividly, all of his characters are archetypes.
But what archetype's Fogg? I know I'm going off topic, but what archetype is Fogg? Because he's not just the upper class English gentleman, because he actually knows how to tie his own shoelaces.
Yeah.
He's not the healer. He's not the hero. He's what is he?
Well,
he's not just an adventurer, because that's not his core motivation. So what is he?
Well, he's the archetype. He's the ideal English gentleman.
Yeah, that's kind of what I said earlier. He
embodies the ideals of
what an English gentleman's supposed to be.
Yeah, that sort of post-industrial chivalric upper class gentleman.
Yeah.
Whereby chivalry became knowing which jacket to wear for dinner.
Well, like, for instance, from other of Verne's works, Captain Nemo is the archetypal ideal of the honorable pirate.
Yeah. But yeah, that was just he's very.
And Passepartout is the archetypical ideal of the worldly valet.
Is he though? Really? He's more like the bumbling valet.
Yeah.
The loyal man. The loyal man, isn't he?
Yeah.
That's not to take away from the character. He's a great character, but he's just he's loyal to a fault to a man who, let's be honest, he has no real connection to, except for the fact that this man pays his wages.
Yeah.
And it's only through the plot that he develops that deep loyalty and they develop that deep personal connection.
Yeah.
Because there's a line in the version I listened to where it says, and the captain told Mrs. Aouda?
Yeah, Aouda.
The tale of her rescue, while heaping praise on Passepartout and Fogg. And Fogg writes in his journal, praise well deserved for Passepartout, but not for me. So he's got this sort of humility to him.
Yeah.
Where he thinks he's just doing his duty.
And I think, and again, I might be getting a little ahead here, because I can't quite remember at what point in the book this happens, but I seem to recall at some point during the book that Fix kind of confronts Passepartout and says about why he thinks Fogg is this criminal.
Yeah, yeah, we're getting to that.
I did, but my point being, Passepartout's like, no, I can't believe this.
No, because I've seen how honourable this man is and how
an honourable gentleman like Mr. Fogg would never do something like that.
Yeah. So they get to Calcutta and they get detained by the police because Fix, who is waiting on a warrant to be wired to him so that he can arrest Fogg, wants to delay him so he can, arrest him on British soil.
Yeah. This is a very funny joke at the expense of technology. And it's a running gag in this book.
Yeah.
That you could travel faster than you could send a message.
Yeah.
Because what had happened is steamboats and trains and everything had taken over. But people were still using telegrams. We're not talking about an era when the telephone was a big thing. Telephone's not a big thing for another 30 years.
I can't remember when the telegraph was invented exactly, but let's just say if it had been invented in this period, the telegraph would have still been very new technology that would be in its infancy and not be everywhere.
Well, it's invented in the 1840s.
Yeah. Okay, but
so
it's not necessarily. But it's not necessarily.
It's new.
It's 20-year-old technology, but it's still new. But it's not. And it's not necessarily like a global network yet of everybody sending Morse codes to everyone across the world yet. We're not at that kind of stage.
We're not in the era where you can send a message from California to Paris in a day. We're nowhere near that era.
Yeah.
Even with Morse code and the telegraph and everything else, we're nowhere near that yet.
We're certainly considering, obviously, when it's only 150 years ago. The fact that we're actually having a conversation now with two people in Britain and somebody in the western part of the United States in real time, somewhat face to face, because we could see. This would be like alien technology to people in this. Period,
it's very Arthur C. Clarke, isn't it? It's an Arthur C. Clarke moment. For anyone who doesn't get that reference, Google Clarke's Third Law.
Yeah.
But that's what's going on here. It's madness, and we start to see that when his travel plans break down, which is Calcutta's really when that starts to happen. Because the elephant you can call a blip, but then by Calcutta things are just going wrong, left, right, and center.
Yeah.
I will point out it's a very British thing not to ask a copper why you're being detained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very white British thing. Like, I've got white friends who genuinely would not question a copper. Like, if a copper walked up to them on the street and said, "Come with me," they wouldn't question it. Whereas me, from a young age, if a copper walked up to me, "But fuck do you want? You got a warrant." That's just me being a snappy
I'm more like you in that respect, Noodle. That I'd be like, if the cops want to detain me, I want to know why. But especially if you're somebody like Fogg, who is, let's be honest, is probably an establishment figure as well. If the authorities want me to detain me, they have a legitimate reason to, and
even though he claims he's got no faith in it.
Yeah, even though he claims he's got no faith in it, he probably does to a certain extent. It's like, well, if they are going to detain me, I'm not going to kick up a stink. We'll clear this mess up. We'll clear this mess up in due course.
and they clear the mess up by paying and then skipping bail.
Yeah, which is just brilliant. If you can afford it, but it's one of those, isn't it, where you expect him to skip the bail. The fact that he even asks for it tells you he's planning on skipping it.
Yeah.
But again, he's calculated into his costs for this journey, getting arrested and having to drop $2,000 in bail.
Yeah.
And again, he's probably realizing that it's probably more of a look, I don't have time for this shit right now, but we'll address this later when I do have time, kind of thing.
Which we see again when he's in America.
Yeah. But I'm leaving the banner up because we're moving on to China.
Because of China and America. Yeah.
Yeah, we're moving on to Hong Kong.
Hong Kong. Right. Go for it, Ring.
So
you go for it while I go get another drink. I'm gonna need one.
So Verne's depiction of China as a country of opium dens and opium addicts, it was essentially
I'm starting to remember this now.
Okay, I'm going to say it's a stereotypical exaggeration, but it's an exaggeration of a situation which had been engineered by the British.
Yes. No, I'm trying to remember what were the dates of the Opium Wars that Britain had with China. I can't quite remember, but it would have been around this time, I think. I can't quite off the top of my head remember the dates, but
Oh yeah. So yeah, the so the second Opium War was 1856 to 1860.
okay, so we're in the aftermath of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now so Fogg gets, Passepartout to book passage onto the ship to go to Yokohama because apparently it was delayed for repairs. And at this point, Passepartout is beginning to get slightly suspicious of Fix, but not because he thinks Fix is, trying to arrest Fogg. He thinks Fix is an agent of the Reform Club who's sent to make Fogg lose his bet.
Yes, I think. So this is the thing. When we get if we get time to get to adaptations later, the cartoon that I watched where in my childhood, which exposed me to the story, there was kind of two separate characters with Fix, who I believe is called Dix in the version that I watched. And then they had this kind of separate character invented who was deliberately sent out by one of the people from the Reform Club to sabotage Fogg. So, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it was just to make the police for a children's thing to make the policeman look a bit more honourable, but misinformed kind of thing. I don't know, but
so Passepartout gets everything booked and learns that the ship is going to leave earlier than they had been told, and but before he can go back to tell Fogg and Awuda, because apparently Awuda's cousin, who had been said to have been living in Hong Kong and would have sheltered her, had moved on to America or had died. I forget which. Oh no, wait, he had retired to the Netherlands. That was it. Fix then confides in Passepartout, and while he does so, takes him into an opium den. And
now I'm remembering. I'm starting to remember this now. Yes.
So hold on. I need to put up the banner again. So takes him into an opium den, and they get to discussing, and Fix slips Passepartout some heroin and knocks him out.
Yeah, I vaguely remember this. But as like I said, more than 20 years since I've read this book. So
I want to point out, in the version I listened to, Fix offered him a cigarette, and then after he took it, told him that it was stronger than European cigarettes and it was a mixture of hemp and opium. So basically, it gave him hash.
Yeah.
Because that's what hash is.
Well,
now, hash is... That's what hash...
Yeah,
Hash as we know it is... We'd probably know it best as really strong weed. Hashish.
not even that. Not even
but
that.
it's a resin.
Hashish is more, as we know, it's kind of more of a mixture of tobacco and marijuana. But
if we were talking in English terms, but I mean, the drug itself, hashish, is actually a resin.
Yeah.
Now, the mixture of opium and hemp would have had the same impact of hashish. That's what I mean by that's what it gave him.
Just put
and
it this
doesn't
way,
tell him what it is until after he smokes it.
Let's put it this way: that's gonna fuck him up big time.
Well,
that is gonna fuck him up.
So in the novel, what Fix does is he slips a bit of the poppy juice from the hookah into Passepartout's drink.
Ew! Yeah. There is no way he didn't notice that.
Or either that, or he he passes the hookah tube to Passepartout, and Passepartout, smokes it without realizing that he's smoking opium.
Yeah, that's the version I think.
I think the point being, he basically gets Passepartout fucked up.
Yeah. We've all been out on that one night out with that one person who says, "Oh, you'll be fine, I'll look after you," and you wake up the following morning and no fucking memory what happened.
Yeah.
That's basically what went on there. Now, say what you want about 18th century Moors and Victorian racism, 19th century Moors even. That's unacceptable.
Yeah.
And there is this kind of... Passepartout's a Frenchman.
Yeah.
It's very not the done thing to get slaughtered in upper class English circles.
Yeah.
In public. Doing your own home's your own business, but moderation in public. Unless you're part of the Bullingdon Club, in which case you just go burn £100 note in front of a beggar, because fuck the poor. I don't know.
I have heard those stories. Yes, I have heard those stories of it. Now, can I verify that any of those stories about the Bullingdon Club are true? No, but let's just put it this way: they are believable enough to think, there might be some truth to them.
To give you context, the reason David Cameron still gets unked at everywhere he goes is because he was in the Bullingdon Club.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's put it this way:
that kind of
squeal piggy, squeal.
Yeah, squeal like a piggy. They're well known for going into restaurants and trashing the place and just dropping money and walking out. Well known.
So,
Yeah.
So
I can't. By the way, people, just so you know, our current Prime Minister was a member of this club. So, yeah.
So was the last one, wasn't it?
Well, no, you are forgetting Theresa May there, but then she is very forgettable.
Yeah, but she's female, so yeah.
Yeah, she is forgettable in a lot of ways. So.
Yeah, well, it's very easy to forget a robot that's only programmed to say 3 different things. Strong and stable, strong and stable, strong and stable. Fields of wheat, strong and stable, strong and stable.
Yeah,
it's like sometimes when people ask me who was the Prime Minister in Britain before in the mid-90s, and I'm like, oh God, what's his name?
John Major.
What's his name? Yeah, but it's like
He's very
John Major. Yeah, the most bland man in the history of politics.
It is becoming probably a mark that you didn't fuck up too badly if people can't remember your name and you were prime minister.
Yeah,
and that's a low mark to hit.
Right, one more thing before we get back on track about this. Got to say one thing. I've got to congratulate the Labour Party on actually getting someone as a leader with less charisma than John Major. That's a fucking achievement.
Why? Who?
Some guy called Starmer, I think, but you know.
Oh, you mean that guy who's actually a knight but claims he represents the working classes? That guy?
Yeah. Anyway, we digress. Yeah. We digress because we're way off topic here.
And like I said, the depiction of China of Hong Kong as being just, seedy and full of opium dens is an exaggeration of a situation that was essentially manufactured by the British.
Listen.
Yes.
London is seedy and full of brothels and pubs. It doesn't mean it's not a good place to go see.
Yeah.
Like every big city has got a seedy underbelly.
Yeah.
I think London. I think London's the worst because it's full of Wetherspoons pubs. So.
Oh God, yeah. you know that place we went to buy Baker Street Ring? That's a Spoons.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. The food's all right, but you'll notice I only had a beer.
Fucking not.
It's a decent portion when you're hungry. That's about all you can say.
It's let's put it this way. How can I say this about Wetherspoons food? If I had a choice, if there was two things left on the earth and it was McDonald's and Wetherspoons food, I'd eat McDonald's, and that's saying a fucking lot.
No, I think I'd take the Wetherspoons.
But okay,
but only because I can have alcohol with it.
So Fix makes sure that Fogg and Elwuda miss the boat by drugging Passepartout.
Yeah. Passepartout somehow makes it back to the boat. We're never quite sure how, but probably drunken antics and Fix dragging him back there.
Well, no, he's found in an opium, he's found in a delirium trying to get back to Fogg to warn him that the timetable had been moved up for the boat. But since he's in an opium delirium, all he's saying is the name of the boat, so he's taken to the boat.
Yeah. This feels like when we find tourists in large cities and just send them back to their hotel.
Yeah.
I'm sure big cities are used to it by now. Don't try. Make sure you know what you're trying before you try it when you travel foreign. That's all I've got to say.
Yeah. So,
as I'm sure Scummer didn't try any of those coca beans once he was back at normal altitude.
I will neither confirm nor deny that.
So, but Fogg manages to charter a boat. And they have a harrowing voyage to catch up to the boat that they were supposed to be on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, he pays the price he thinks it's worth.
Yeah.
I feel like Fogg would make a really good American. Because Fogg knows the secret of American capitalism. There's no such thing as a problem if you can pay your way out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one thing I know about living in America is that I can throw money at a problem to make it go away.
As I mentioned earlier, Fogg was an homage to an actual American adventurer. So
that tracks.
As they're sailing and the typhoon is welling up behind them, that the sea captain says we need to make for a port, and Fogg says, I agree. But the only port I know of is the Beijing port, or whatever, the port they were heading to catch up to the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the captain's like, I like the cut of your jib, and it amused me.
Yeah. And then we have the storm.
Yeah.
In the this book suffers a lot from Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
There is no human being alive who is this lucky.
Yeah.
Having missed the boat on its way out, see it on its way out to sea, which is completely... If you look at a map from where Shanghai and what the route would have been from Shanghai to America, and then the boat coming down the coast, they wouldn't have crossed paths.
Well, so... Okay, so the boat
it would have been awkward.
Yeah, so the boat they were supposed to go on, it left Hong Kong, and it was making its way up the coast, making port in, different ports to Shanghai, and then finally to Yokohama.
Yeah.
Fogg didn't know this until he learned it from the captain when he hired the captain on, so they were going to Shanghai to meet the boat.
Yeah. So they have the storm, and it just so happens that the boat they're on and the boat they're looking for cross paths, and they get rescued by this boat. Phineas Fogg should be that comic book character whose superpower is that they're lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he has
the
kind
chances
of the luck of
A, running across that boat, B, recognizing it, C, being able to get a distress flare out in those conditions, and then getting a successful rescue.
Yeah.
Well,
I think this is almost a prototype of, should we say, a lot of characters in fiction and movies say about the hero just having a certain amount of luck at certain times when they really shouldn't have a way out of a situation.
There's a thing with Fogg that kind of irritates me as well, and it comes back to this whole honor thing. Anything he does honorably never blows back in his face. And that feeds into the ideal of this honorable gentleman. You make your own luck.
Yeah.
There's an argument for a bit of a bootstrap theory in there, as if you do the right thing, you'll get your just rewards.
Yeah.
There's a moralistic undertone.
So, I mean, there is something that...
I can't knock...
Can't knock it, but it is that.
I can't knock that. I can't really knock that as a literary thing, because that's an illusion that's still portrayed in films or literature to this day.
Yeah, good things happen to people.
If you do the right thing, it's gonna come back to it. If you do the right thing, it's gonna work out in the end. Which we know in reality, that's not how life works.
Well, and arguably there is a counterpoint when we get to America, which we are getting to America.
Yeah, let's get to America. So they land in America in the middle of an election.
Yeah, we'll skip the bit in Japan because it's just Passepartout becomes a clown and then finds Fogg.
Yeah, Passepartout becomes a clown.
I think we should skip that because we are like 2 hours in here and we're only like two-thirds of the way around the world.
The only commentary on that is more, casual Victorian racism.
So there are a couple things that I want to note on the voyage to America. One, Passepartout finds Fix and decks him.
Yeah, about damn time.
And then and I'm bringing this up because this isn't the first foreshadowing bit. We've just kind of breezed over all the others where people keep telling Passepartout that his clock is wrong, that his watch is wrong, because it doesn't match up to local time. When they hit the 100th the 180th meridian. Meridian. He looks at his watch and is pleased to find that the sun had caught up to the proper time.
Yeah. Which is, I do like the way it's done in there, and it's done right from the beginning of when Fogg points out to Passepartout, you're slow, your watch is slow, so he moves it forward.
No, he doesn't move it forward. He'll like Passepartout spends like the entire book insisting that the sun will catch up to his watch. Yeah. And then when they hit the meridian, he has this smug moment that the sun finally caught up
to my watch. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of commentary around that could be made, but let's just take it as the comic relief moment it is.
Well, and also
stretches you could do, but this in a yoga class.
Yeah, and also pointing out that the twist is being foreshadowed basically from the very beginning.
Yeah. Like if you've seen any adaptation of this book, you see Passepartout moving his watch forward repeatedly. And the twist should not be a surprise to you at all. Yeah. And to me, that is a strength of this book. I don't like there's this modern. I'm going to rant for a second. Okay. There's a modern tendency to try and write stories where the audience don't see the twist coming. That's bad writing. If your film, if your book, if your story is structured properly and you've written it correctly, your audience should expect the twist and should, with some forethought and critical application of thought, be able to predict it. That's not bad writing. That is good writing. Okay? Don't pull a Game of Thrones where they went online and said, okay, that's the theory that least people like and least people have thought of, so we'll go with that one. That's just stupidness. Go with the twist that works for the plot, please.
Well, I'll give the ultimate example of the ultimate fail of that whole thing of we don't see the twist coming is anyone who's read any of Dan Brown's Robert Langdon series, like the Da Vinci Code, whatever, that he tries to write this in a way that there's going to be a twist at the end that you don't see coming, but you actually do because it's so fucking obvious, even though he's trying to make it look like it's something you don't see coming.
Anyone who labels Dan Brown's books as mysteries doesn't understand what a mystery is.
They're not
suspenseful either.
I'm going to paraphrase Stuart. I'm going to paraphrase Stuart Lee here for a second, okay? And he was talking about, to say, something that happens in America with where they were burning copies of the Quran or something. Yeah. He says, I don't believe in burning religious books, whether it be the Bible or the Quran or whatever. Especially when there's like hundreds of pristine copies of the Da Vinci Codes in Waterstones right now.
Like, and I mean, if you really want to burn it, look at how many copies there are of 50 Shades of Grey out there.
Yeah, I don't agree with burning books, but if you are inclined that way, Dan Brown's a good place to start.
For me, Dan Brown is a straightforward adventure book. It's not meant to be suspenseful or thing. And if you take it that way, it's a reasonably good afternoon on the beach to read.
It's really not.
It is. I mean, I've read Angels and Demons a few times as a teenager, and I'd say this as a teenager. I enjoyed the book.
I have. I've read 3 or 4 of that series, and
I've read all 4.
I've read all 4, and I was just like, Why do I keep punishing myself for reading this shit?
What I'm getting at is, if you take a Dan Brown book, not as a suspense or as a mystery, but as I'm going to know how this ends by page 10, and so I'm just along for the ride and I'm going to enjoy the ride, and it's a mindless read, you can glean some enjoyment from it. But it does depend on how you take it. And it's been... Dan Brown's strength is not in writing mysteries. Dan Brown's strength is in making his audience feel clever because his characters are stupid, even though they're supposed to be clever.
So, anyways,
you can take that either as a positive or a negative.
Anyway, I think this could be a separate episode of Media Musings in itself, like the shit that Dan Brown calls literature. But
so on to America.
Yeah.
So they land in San Francisco and get embroiled in a mob.
Yeah, some kind of election process.
Yes. And after Fogg does the honorable, English gentleman thing and having an altercation with one of the people in the mob, and then later fixing a date for him to return and have a duel.
Yeah, I will point out there's this whole running gag of this American thinking he's not honourable because he's trying to fix a later date.
Yeah.
Americans, why are you always in such a rush?
Yeah.
This is an international stereotype of Americans, that you're always really in a hurry.
Yeah.
And I think it comes from New York and like that business side of it, but it does around the world. Americans are in a hurry. We're always just in a hurry. They're always busy. They've got to be doing something, you know. To the point that there's a great story of my great aunt who lived and died out in America eventually. She would say, a difference between an Englishman and an American. In the morning, an Englishman wakes up, stretches, opens his curtains, and looks out his window and says, "My, what a beautiful day! The sun is out, and the birds are singing, and the grass is growing."
Yeah, and
he values the day. An American wakes up in the morning, sits up in bed, and goes, "Dollar."
Yeah.
And immediately, from the moment he wakes up to the moment he goes to sleep, he's in a rush to make money.
Yeah.
Now, that was her perception, and that was her story. But that is the stereotype of Americans, and it really comes across in this part of the book.
Yeah,
that this guy's always just time. And obviously time is a major theme in this book, but he pushes it to... Are there really people like that who are just so ridiculously obsessed with doing everything now?
But, and there's the joke that, where Fix and Fogg are like, "Oh, this must have been, quite the position to cause such a stir." And no, it's just postmaster.
Yeah. Although the postmaster was quite a powerful figure in the American West in this era.
Yeah.
1870s, this would have been... This is about Reconstruction era, isn't it? 18 post-Civil War.
Was this published in 1872? I think this book was published.
Yeah.
Published in 1872, based in 1868, I think it says. Or 1861.
Yeah, so I guess, this would be Reconstruction era.
So, the postmaster's quite a powerful position within a small community.
Yeah. And now we're also reached into the portion of the book where Fix seemingly switches sides, but doesn't really.
I want to take a moment to talk about Fix's motives and alignment here.
Yeah.
Can I just clarify?
Fix's motives never changed.
From what I remember of the book at this point, that Fix appears to change sides because it's more that he wants to get Fogg back onto British soil as quick as possible so that he can arrest him. That's my understanding of this.
Yeah, it's a jurisdiction issue.
Yeah. They've reached the point where Fogg is no longer on English soil, and thus outside of Fix's jurisdiction.
And Fix couldn't figure out a way of like somehow diverting Fogg into Canada. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, Fix is not exactly the sharpest spoon in the shed, is he?
Yeah. So they get on the railway and reach the first of their hurdles, which is a bridge that had fallen into disrepair. And one of the Americans has a suggestion.
Go on.
They jump the train across the river.
Oh boy!
Is that even like physically possible?
Yeah. or more, run it across the bridge at full speed to make it across before the bridge collapses.
It's the Blues Brothers, isn't it? It's got a lot of pickup.
Why am I getting the vibes of the movie Speed here as well? You know?
Yeah. It is. It's Kaz got a lot of pickup. Yeah. Utterly ridiculous, of course, but it's an adventure story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, the physics of that just ain't gonna work. But it's just kind of just suspend disbelief for this part of the plot, I think, really.
And
I feel like you have to suspend disbelief from the moment they leave Britain.
Yeah.
For this story to work.
And of course we reach Utah, which we have a chapter that's just basically all Mormon jokes.
I knew there was a reason you wanted to read this book.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Mormon jokes are... I can take them or leave them.
Yeah.
You've got to understand, Verne would have been a Catholic. He's French.
Yeah.
He would have been a Catholic.
Okay. I'll just say my favourite, let's just say, old bad Mormon joke was from a old British comic called Blast the Baits, and saying the Mormons came to his house one day and knocked on his door saying, "Hey, we are the Church of the Latter-day Saints. You mean you're the Mormons?" Says, "Yeah. Don't you practice like polygamy?" "Well, yes, we do." He says, "You should be bloody well argued." He says, "Aye, we are." Bad Mormon joke. I would just say very bad Mormon joke.
Yeah. It's... I know why it's there.
Yeah.
And it's amusing to me that those jokes are still relevant 150 years later, 200 years later. We're getting on for what? 150 years later. But I don't know. I can take them or leave them. There's not a lot of plot going on in this part of the story, so it is literally just Mormon jokes.
Yeah, and Passepartout sits in a lecture about Mormonism, and eventually is the only one left sitting there, and and the Mormon missionary makes the altar call, and Passepartout heroically stands up and shouts, "No!"
No, just say no to Mormonism, kids.
Yeah. And then they discover that the American Fogg had the altercation with is also on the train.
Yeah. And so he wants his jewel.
So they proceed to make sure Fogg never runs into him by distracting him with the only thing that can hold his attention. Of
Whist.
course, we're talking about whist.
I will point out, it is established very early on. Fogg goes to the club at 11 o'clock every morning. He leaves at 9:30, gets there for 11, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Leaves at 9:30. He doesn't return until the stroke of midnight every day.
Yeah.
This dude sits and plays 12 hours of cards every day. Now, I used to work in a casino. Do you know what we call people like that? Addicts.
Yeah.
Okay, he must have been so bored. Like most poker rooms aren't even open for those hours.
Well, and Fogg was also described as the kind of person who would take any bet just for the challenge.
Yeah.
Just for the challenge.
See, for me, so it's actually but they does make a mistake, does Verne, when he describes this game. This is a game played in pairs. Only 3 of them sit down to play.
Yeah, I mean, I
thought it was all 4. Fix, Awuda, Passepartout, and Fogg.
You can sit down with 4 and play it, but I generally it's played between 2 people. And from what I haven't played whist. I used to enjoy whist and Jim Rummy, those sort of games. But
Jim Rummy,
it's which are similar games from my recollection. I haven't really sat down and played anything other than poker really in the last 20 years. But
ask anyone. But so far as I know, I think hearts trump in whist, don't they? Hearts, spades, diamonds, clubs. So when the American shows up and says, "I want hearts," and he's playing a spade, the American's actually right.
Yeah.
He should play the heart if he's got it.
And of course, now they have to get ready for the duel.
Yeah. And this is where we first start to see how Oda is attracted to Fogg.
Yeah.
She's very worried about him.
Yeah.
The thing is, if you know anything about Victorian jewels, most of the people who took part in them couldn't shoot for shit.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. Second of all, very few of them ended in death. Most of them ended in they'll deliberately fire wide and then go have a drink, shake hands, and settle things that way.
Yeah.
So, it's not as big a deal as she's making out. But she's Indian with an English education. So she's been taught the idealized version of the English propaganda. So she probably believes this is really going to be a life or death duel.
Yeah.
Which they clearly don't. But then we have the interruption.
Yeah.
Translates so it doesn't stop.
So they decide to have it on the train.
Yeah. Then right as the duel starts.
Banner.
Yeah. The train heist, basically.
Yeah.
Obviously this is not the term Verne uses, but let's call them natives.
Yeah.
Was this the bit where I think that, from what I remember, they were described as the Sioux Nation, Sioux tax track?
Yeah.
From my basic recollection of this.
They're Sioux in the way that anyone who doesn't know anything about any American tribes will say, "Oh, Native American must be Sioux." You know, God knows what they were really.
Okay, I will say, at this point, they're like kind of in the Dakota, in the Dakota territory.
They're in the right,
they're in the right area for them to actually be Sioux.
Yeah,
is my point.
And again, I'm going off of stuff I haven't read up in a long time here, but I believe like the Sioux Nation was almost an amalgamation of several different tribes, like the Oglala and the Lakota and so on, to form that nation. And I even think, from what my recollection was, that Sioux was kind of almost a derogatory term that their adversaries, people, the enemies, used against them. But my knowledge of this is very. I haven't read up on this stuff in a long time.
Yeah.
Let's hold our hands up, Scummer. You and I did Asterix and the Great Crossing during Native American Awareness Week. We don't know shit about this stuff.
Okay. To give context here, if people don't know this, Noodle and I did Asterix and the Great Crossing, which are the most racist fucking depictions of Native Americans you could ever hope to imagine. And then after we finished the stream,
literally
Noodle
within 5
DM'd a bit. Noodle DM'd me like 10 minutes after. So shit. I just realised this is day one of Native American History Month. I'm like, fuck. It's like,
we swear we did not know.
Yeah, we did not. We did not know. It was
I think we might be repeating that.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
I'm thinking it's about this time last year.
Yeah, because I just remembered there's a reason I'm not doing Wizard of Oz for Lit Month ever.
Yeah.
But to be fair, it's a very small part of the novel.
It is.
Yeah,
Native American Heritage Month is November.
Okay.
So we're not quite in so much. Quite. We're safe. We're safe.
We're safe.
Yes. That happened last year, folks, and that was a total bit of ignorance on our part. But if you do go and watch that stream, which I believe is on Noodle's channel, because Noodle seemed to ended up with all the controversial ones. We treated that with as much respect as we possibly could, and condemned the fuck out with the racism.
Yeah, we absolutely. I flipped my shit at it. I know you did as well. So we have this takedown. Passport 2 is now missing. The train's broken apart into two. And they've stopped at the station. Passport 2 is God knows where. They think he's been taken prisoner. And Fogg has this moment of, again, with the very close to the line Christian moralizing.
Yeah.
With Fogg talking to the head of the outpost or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Where he says, but there's a man missing. And the guy says, yes, but you can't ask me to risk 50 men to go save one. And Fogg says, but you should. Look, I was raised Catholic. Sometimes it can't be helped, but I had flashbacks to Sunday school and the lamb.
Yeah.
And the missing sheep story.
And they compromised by getting volunteers, and because the American military is so noble and heroic, like a bunch of people volunteer. Like an entire platoon just volunteers.
Yeah, like 30 men volunteer. Like, how many men were even on the train?
Yeah.
30 men's quite a lot of military age as well.
Yeah, well, the train came to stop by a military fort.
And the call out Fogg puts out is, so how many men volunteer to go rescue the man who's the reason we're all alive?
Yeah.
Which, manipulative much.
I kind of feel Fogg maybe should have volunteered himself for this as well. So.
I mean, to be fair, he did. He went along, didn't he? And he wanted to.
Yeah. He did he? I can't. Yeah. So again, my memories of this are pretty.
But Fix was gonna volunteer, but Fogg's like, no, you
stay with the girl.
Yeah, you stay with Aouda.
Yeah. What annoys me about Fogg in this moment? Casual Victorian sexism alert. He finds out that during this whole train kerfuffle, when no one was watching her, she shot multiple attackers in the arms and legs because, I quote, a lady must defend herself. Which is fucking brilliant, by the way.
Yeah.
Fucking awesome. And then still assumes that she's not capable and should be left behind.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you didn't get one shot off and she knows she took down at least 3. Like, and there's no sort of acknowledgement that actually she is more than capable of keeping up with them.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's that whole Victorian era, should we say, English gentleman stroke answer to the code of chivalry from ancient times kind of thing going on there. Like, you're not going to put the lady in danger here,
Yeah, but the thing is as well that really annoys me, from this point in the book onwards, all she does is apologise for slowing him down.
Yeah.
Like, if it weren't for her, they would have probably died on that train.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, a little bit... at a certain point, it's like... I do. Now I'm starting to remember this a little bit now, but I do remember after a certain point, it's like she's a bit like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I've been like, I've been affording you. I'm the woman dragging you down, kind of thing." And,
and she really plays up to the damsel.
Yeah,
to being the damsel, and she's clearly not.
And while Fogg goes off to rescue Passepartout, and Passepartout apparently didn't need much rescuing because casual Victorian racism.
There's this moment where they have a standoff, and Fogg describes the chief looking them over and deciding that he can't win this battle, so he just produces Passepartout bound and at the hands and feet. Not how that shit went down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can understand why you did it, because this book is quite clearly meant for a broad consumption. Adults and children alike. It's a very popular book. So I can understand why you wouldn't want to get into all the blood, guts, and gore of full-on fight of, the American military and the natives, and would want to, assume a level of reasonableness there.
Though it does, like when it switches to Passepartout's point of view, it does describe him like knocking out like 3 or 4 just with his bare hands.
Exactly.
Because casual Victorian racism.
Yeah, in the same way that all the Indians they met were greedy and wanted the best money. All the Native Americans they've met are easy to fight, can be killed with your bare hands. And
I will say in one adaptation that may have been true, and that might have been when Jackie Chan was Passepartout, but
but Jackie Chan still needed a mop and 3 paint buckets.
So that may have possibly been true in that version, but I
mean, I wouldn't want to argue with Jackie Chan, would you?
Yeah.
Although knowing what I know about, and I'm not a martial artist, but knowing what I know about certain things that, shall we say, work in real life and don't. A lot of the shit Jackie Chan does not work in real life.
Yeah, it doesn't work in real life, but that doesn't mean that he's not physically capable of doing them like on an individual level. It's just stringing them together that
I know it's a bit like the trope, the Chuck Norris jokes trope, sort of thing,
Yeah, but there's like, for example, there's a film where Jackie Chan jumps off a building in Who Am I? And he jumps clean off and he lands flat on his face. Now, quite clearly, that didn't happen. But then in the next scene, from being flat on his face, he pushes himself up into a full push-up. He actually did that.
Yeah.
Like cold, just no strings, no nothing. He just did that and held it for several minutes while they were filming.
I mean, that's a well-known thing. That's a well-known thing about Jackie Chan. When he first came to America, like I think one of the first films he did was Rush Hour, and he wanted to do this like stunt where he was like balancing off the edge of a building kind of thing, and he really wanted to genuinely do the stunt. And they're saying, Jackie, we could do the same thing with you like 2 foot off of the ground and use, and he genuinely wanted to do the stunt.
But he's used to Hong Kong culture where the health and safety doesn't really translate into Mandarin.
Yeah.
If you watch any of Jackie's older movies, like, I mean, it's the classic when they do the outtakes at the end of the movie, and there's the classic thing with was it Rumble in the Bronx where a stunt goes wrong and a motorcycle rides over his balls?
Yeah. Rumble in the Bronx.
Anyway, we digress. We're off topic again.
But, while this is happening, Fix is having a bit of a crisis of conscience where he begins to have some doubts.
Yeah, because he begins to see for himself what an honourable, decent gentleman Fogg is.
Yeah.
Doesn't stop him.
Yeah.
But he questions it.
Yeah,
and then
he's at least starting to question the narrative that he's had, should we say.
Yeah.
And so they get back and find that they've missed their train. So they hire a sailing sledge.
Oh boy. I'm not saying a fucking
I know
word.
you're Jewish, but Ove.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. Moving on.
Yeah.
Though having briefly experienced the kind of winds that blow across the Great Plains in the winter, I can actually kind of believe that bit.
Yeah.
Hey, I felt the way the car rocked when we drove across just the South Dakota Badlands in June. So I can well believe that the winds would pick up strong enough too.
I'll say this thing about this, that at least the majority of this novel, it's halfway believable on certain aspects. I mean, okay, the whole thing of the train jumping onto the road, that's fucking ridiculous. But a lot of it is like you could suspend your disbelief. You could at least suspend your disbelief.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could at least suspend your disbelief enough to think there's enough logic and reality in this that you could kind of see this working.
Yeah. Which takes us on to the next bit when he gets to the other end and realizes he's missed his steamer.
Yeah.
And so goes toddling off down the port looking for a boat.
Yeah.
And finds Captain Speedy.
Yeah.
Of Penzance. Arr.
And who is, going to Bourbon.
No, going to Bordeaux.
Bordeaux. That's right. Knew it was some kind of wine.
You were not doing it getting a
Bourbon's not a wine.
In there. Reference, were you there, Noodle?
Yes, I was, but it fell flat. It sank.
Well, I am the very model of a modern Major General.
So, yeah, so he's going to the port of Bordeaux.
Yeah. Now, Bordeaux is what? The northern France?
Yeah.
Middle to north of France. I think it's, from what I remember, I think it's north of La Rochelle, but off the top of my head, but I'm
Just in general, France.
I'm not
I'm
sure.
not interested enough in France to know beyond that.
It's,
Fogg tries
it's the West
to,
Coast,
you know,
West Coast.
Fogg tries to tell, to convince him to make a detour in Liverpool.
That's not a small detour.
And
that's pretty minor, is it? Yeah.
Wait, is Liverpool East Coast? Liverpool's on the North Sea, isn't it?
Liverpool's on the west coast of England.
It's on the west coast of
Liverpool's
England,
west coast, over by Ireland and then onto
the Irish Sea.
Yeah, it's me getting confused. Ignore me.
Yeah.
Left and right dyspraxia. Just
Yeah.
So it's not a small detour, but
you should know Liverpool, Noodle. It's in the north of England. You should know it. So it's that uncivilized part of the country that you live in. Yeah.
Are you booked in for tea with the Queen later? You live in the south, don't you?
Oh, I know Liz well. Yeah, I know Lizzie well.
Tell her to sort her hair out.
And
will do.
And by her hair, I mean her hair as in a nephew, not her hair on her head.
All right.
And so, Captain Speedy obviously declines.
But there's a tiny little thing I just want to point out.
Yeah.
This ship has enough coal on it to get 2/3 of the way to Liverpool.
Yeah.
I assure you would need more coal than that to get from America to Bordeaux.
Yeah.
So how was he planning on getting to Bordeaux? Like, he didn't have enough coal on board. Was he going to sail the rest of the way, or what the hell?
Well, they're probably actually thinking about ships at the period of the time. There might have been a mix between steam. There might have been a mix.
It was a mixed steam sailboat.
Now, but how was it described in the book? Was it put as an out-and-out steamer or a steam sailor?
I don't
quite.
It was a steam sail, but they did end up getting slightly becalmed after Fogg pulls his mutiny.
Yeah. So Fogg pulls a mutiny and this has got to be the most English mutiny since someone told Cromwell to go fuck himself. Just putting that out there.
Yeah. he literally just bribes the crew and locks the captain in his cabin.
And then pays him for the boat. So it's not in a mutiny, it's just an extended sales negotiation. And leaves him half the boat, promises him half the boat.
Yeah, no, he pays him for all the wood on the boat.
So, it's not even a mutiny, it's just chartering, but with extra steps.
Yeah.
And then they start dismantling the boat. Now, this is where we have to talk about the Jackie Chan version and how it differs.
Yeah.
Because this version very clearly makes sense, common sense. Burn the boat, make the steam, go to Liverpool.
Yeah.
Done. In the Jackie Chan version, they tear the boat apart and build a plane because shenanigans.
Yeah.
Of course, they'd run into the Wright brothers, whereas,
yeah. So, and they make it to Liverpool just in time, but unfortunately for them, they're on English soil.
And he's promptly arrested for 3 days.
Yep. No.
Now they make it to England 2 days up front. They've got 2 days in hand. That's what Fogg says.
Yeah.
And then he gets arrested and held overnight because there's a mix-up. And again, great British justice looking after white men. You don't get held for very long if you're innocent, if you're white. Note the sarcasm in my tone.
Yeah.
Gets released and thinks he's missed his deadline.
Yep.
So goes home and basically decides to be miserable.
So, can I just say, if Phileas Fogg was black, he'd have lost the bet here.
Yeah.
If Phileas Fogg was black, he'd have lost the bet in America when he argued with that guy.
Yeah.
But at this point, even if he had come through whatever that,
if
he lost the fucking bet here.
So trigger warning for a very, very like dark. Yeah.
Do you know what Liverpool's famous for?
Well, hold on. Trigger warning.
Because if Phileas Fogg was black, he'd be the only black man for at least another 60 years to sail into Liverpool rather than to be picked up on a boat that left there.
If Phileas Fogg was black, he'd be hanging in California.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's be honest. There's a reason in his story Phileas Fogg isn't black, because he wouldn't have gotten very far.
He would not have gone very far at all.
I
think a black person would struggle to get round the world in 80 days today. Never mind.
Yeah.
150 years ago. Because the comment that's passed in India of all passports are is an irritant for the travelling classes and an aid for thieves and vagabonds or whatever.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, if he was black, he'd have had to show his visa at every damn port.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was actually
let's put it this way.
Made that Fix that made that observation.
I'll just say, ignoring the rest of the plot up until this point, if Fogg was black and picked up on British soil, it'd be like the Noodle might remember this, the Constable Savage sketch out of Not the 9 o'clock news.
Yeah. Less said about that, the better, I think.
So,
yeah.
Fix apologizes to Fogg. Fogg orders a special train to London. Makes it to London what he thinks as minutes too late and goes home to mope.
See, the thing is, if he's released at dawn in Liverpool, which is when they would have released prisoners, about 7:30, 8 o'clock-ish, given that it's December, it's probably 8:30, 9 o'clock-ish that is released in Liverpool.
Yeah.
And the bet was to be there for midday. I want to know how the fuck he got to London in 3 hours. You can't even do that today on the train.
But let's be honest, trains back then ran better than they do now.
Yes, but even HS2 was promising those kinds of speeds.
Yeah. It's one of the big fucked up things I think about British trains that I'm gonna go off on a tangent slightly here. But I just want to say something about the railways since they've been privatized in the UK. A few years ago, I went to Edinburgh in Scotland for a short break with my ex.
Wait, are you talking pre-privatisation?
We're talking post-privatisation.
I was going to say, because that'd be more than a few years ago.
Yes, we're talking post-privatisation. That it cost me £5 more to fly to Edinburgh than it did to get the fucking train.
Yeah,
and
sounds about right.
And it worked out a lot fucking cheaper in considering like the connection points up or whatever. And it's like, hold on, for an extra £5, I can spend 1 hour on a fucking plane or 9.5 hours on a fucking train.
What were you doing?
Yeah,
Flying Heathrow to Edinburgh?
Southampton to Edinburgh.
Yeah, so it's about an hour and 20 minutes on the plane.
Yeah, it was about an hour to about an hour and a quarter or so on the plane.
Yeah,
on
with
the
the following
plane.
wind you'll do it.
It was a fucking 9-hour train journey, and it cost me £5 more to get the fucking plane. And it's like that says something about how fucked up train fares are in the UK, I think.
I'll give you a best one. Last week, to get from Bradford to Bridlington, which is 70 miles. Guess how long it takes on the train? Northern.
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Just shy of 3 hours one way. For 70 miles. Like, I've actually done that. I've actually gone on the road on a 125 scooter and done it faster than I got there on the train.
That's fucking ridiculous. That's the same distance between Southampton and London. You know?
That is... when I did it on a 125 scooter going up Garraby Hill, I might add, so going up that way on all the A roads, not on the motorways, I did that 75-mile journey from my home to Bridlington. I did that in under 2 hours. Because all the A roads, obviously, speed limit 60 miles an hour all the way up. So you hit Garraby Hill, then you're lucky if you can hit 30 miles an hour on a 125. But you get there.
The point being, I'd have been kind of willing to eat the 9.5-hour train journey if it was about 30 quid or something. And the flight was 110. Oh, okay. To fly there, it's 110. To get a train, it's 105. And it's like, if the train journey was like between 30 and 40 quid, I'd eat the 9.5-hour train journey. And I was like, seriously, if the difference is, if it's £5 more expensive to fly, something's fucking wrong there. Anyway, I think we're way off topic.
Leeds to London on the plane. I'm looking at prices right now. If you fly EasyJet, Leeds to London, you can get a flight for 100 quid.
Yeah.
I know for a fact if you try and get a train down to London, you're looking at £130.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, privatisation of the rail has worked so good in Britain. Hey. Boom, boom.
Don't worry, they're privatising the NHS next, but I don't think we'll notice the difference by the time they get there.
Yeah.
Oh, you will when the bill comes in.
Listen, I got referred for an appointment for my eyes in April. The appointment's in November.
Can I just say, I think we are massively off topip now.
Yeah, we are massively off topic.
Because I think if we can get into it, I think privatisation of British Rail and the National Health Service could be two streams within itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Fogg decides that, well, least he can do is try and make a decent life for Awuda. So he proposes to her and sends Passepartout.
See, I read a different version.
I was going to say,
no, wait. He
offers her the money that he has left to make a life for herself, and then she proposes to him.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to say. From my recollection, I thought she proposed marriage to him.
Yeah, she proposed to him.
Which again, which is a little different because considering in culture at that time, it was it's the and even to this day, it's kind of expected that the man's the one who gets down on his knee and says, "Hey, will you marry me?"
Yeah, like it's not the done thing, except on a leap year. It's really not the done thing. Maybe on the odd Valentine's, but it's just I don't know how it is in America, but for the idea of even, you proposed to me ring. If I'd have come home and said, I proposed to ring and I had the ring ring, someone would have looked, what kind of relationship you in? It's just weird. It's not culturally normalized at all. It should be, don't get me wrong, if you love someone and you want to marry them, although, aside from making a few legal things less fiddly, I don't understand why you need the piece of paper.
Yeah.
Maybe you really like wedding cake. I don't know. But yeah, like it's just weird.
And past part 2 goes out.
Don't ask me how lesbians do. I haven't figured that out yet.
Well, I was gonna say that's the one case where you'd expect the woman to propose.
Yeah. I haven't figured out how they manage it yet.
Yeah.
Well, again, that could be a whole conversation about gender roles for another time, really, isn't it? But
and and they send Passepartout out to get the parson, and then we cut to the Reform Club.
Yeah, where people are chatting away and they're talking about how, he wasn't on the train in, and there's been no telegram, so quite clearly he's not coming.
Yeah.
And the Bank of England manager has seen pound signs.
Yeah.
But Flanagan, who has been a bit of a sweetheart all the way through, has been really sort of salt of the earth, grounded guy, who only really placed the bet because, he just thought it was utterly ridiculous.
Yeah.
And who wasn't all that keen on the media furor around it and didn't like the way Fogg was being exploited for that or anything else.
Yeah.
It says, no, we have to wait till the designated time. And we get the countdown, the literal countdown of the last 10 seconds. Yeah. And someone passes the comment of, what Fogg's like, how particular he is. It would suit him to arrive at the last possible moment.
Yeah.
Which is just perfect. And then we cut back to Fogg and...
Yeah, it's kind of thing. Fogg will arrive exactly right on time. Kind of thing.
and
a wizard is never early.
Yeah, and we see Fogg's arrival right on time from the point of view of the Reform Club, and then it cuts back to the day before, where Passepartout learns that the parson isn't in because it's Sunday.
Yeah.
And we learn that, the twist, which had been, foreshadowed for the entire novel, they'd been steadily gaining hours by continually going east and had thus gained a day.
Yeah. Plus, Fogg reckoned on that he had accounted for something like an extra 5 days in hand in case of mix-ups and delays and things. 2 of which he used rescuing the Indian girl. One used catching up to the boat.
Yeah.
So, he's still got...
So can we say, by the way, Jules Verne wrote this and how it was possible to do this journey due to the way they travelled around the world? Do you think Jules Verne was ahead of his time in saying, fuck you, you flat earth morons?
Quite possibly, yes. I will say as well, I'm not entirely enamoured of Jules Verne's geography, and I'm not entirely convinced that it was possible, because if you can get from Liverpool to London in 3 hours, around the world in 80 days sounds a lot easier.
Yeah.
So I think there was a bit of
it was a specially commissioned direct express train.
I mean, even still, it still takes time.
Yeah.
to get down there. The railway lines will only take you up to a certain speed. It was a steam train after all.
Yeah. Also, if I remember right, the actual time that they were going to arrive, that he was due to arrive, was like 9:40 p.m. or something like that.
Yeah. Actually, that makes more sense. Yeah, 12 hours from Liverpool to London on a steam train. Sounds about right. Yeah. So he arrives and claims his winnings.
Yeah.
Happily ever after.
Yep.
It's a fun story.
Yeah.
I think casual Victorian racism aside, I can understand why there have been so many adaptations of this book.
Yeah.
There have been at least half a dozen on film. There's one out in cinema now.
Well,
Yeah.
There's an animated version of it out now.
I'm just saying, I think, we could do a separate stream on all the adaptations of this novel. And I want to say the imitations of this trip of people who tried to did this in real life. There's a whole thing of people who've done. I mean, the famous one is the former, Monty Python group. Michael Palin did a series of Around the World in 80 Days where he recreated Fogg's journey.
Yeah.
And it's a really fun series if you ever get a chance to watch it. It's a lot of fun. And it could all. So in other words, this. This thing was very influential. But I think you have to maybe put yourself back into the mind of someone from the Victorian era, where the idea of traveling around the world in 80 days is,
almost ludicrous. Yeah.
It is ludicrous. It is science fiction, which is obviously Jules Verne is known as being one of the early pioneers of science fiction. I mean, in a certain way, this is
an early continuation of that. Yeah.
Yeah, this is an early version of that in a certain sense.
I think as well, and I will say this: the American road trip movie owes a lot to this book and this concept. Two guys traveling, getting where they want to go with shenanigans along the way. And the friends of the destination is the friends we made along the way. It's very It's got all of that.
So
around the world in 80 days is the original Easy Rider, essentially.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you guys.
Okay.
So, how long do you figure it would take nowadays? You're only allowed to use an airplane to cross an ocean.
Oh, okay. So we'd go. I'd fly UK to Europe, which is
an ocean.
Okay, so we get the ferry from Dover to France. That's 2 hours plus the journey down to Dover from wherever you're from is going to take X amount of time. But let's say we start at Dover. The ferry from Dover into France is a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Then you've got to cross Europe. Now the way to cross Europe fastest is still the train. If you're landbound.
Yeah.
I would be tempted on some of the longer stretches to jump on a high-powered motorbike, depending on the road conditions and the traffic.
Yeah.
I would be tempted. But the high-speed rail hits sort of 190 miles an hour. No motorbike's doing that on the road. Or at least no rider's stupid enough to do that on a public road, I hope.
No comment.
Yeah, exactly. Except maybe on the Autobahn, but
I'll say
you stop off at church first.
No, I never got that. I never went that fast. But I will say I used to have a bike and I rode like a pillock. But
yeah, you need a 900 at least to get to hit sort of 180 miles an hour.
I'll say, because I rode what was called a naked bike, should we say no fairing and whatever screens that
Yeah,
behind.
so you had the
I'll just
aerodynamics on your
say
side, and
around 100, it started to get a bit hairy.
I mean, to be fair, my modern 125 would quite happily sit at 68.
Yeah.
Quite happily, all day long. You know what? On national speed limit roads.
And that's saying a lot about
one say that out loud, but you know,
yeah,
that's saying a lot about 125s, because when I got a 125, 60 was pushing it. You know that was
but mine was a 4-stroke.
Fucking limit. You know, but
Scummer, I was on a 4-stroke.
But that's going. Like I said, this is going back 15 odd years ago, and
you'd have been on a 2-stroke, so you'd have had the acceleration, but not being able to maintain it as much at high speed. Whereas I have slower initial acceleration, but then once I'm at the speed, I can stay there. Which is all technicalities. So it's going to take you. Yeah. What do they say in a Gulf? You can get from Warsaw to Berlin on 1 tank of fuel.
I've heard that, but
I've heard it. They advertised it as such. So you're going to need at least a week to cross Europe without stopping.
Yeah.
So you're getting trains, and then once you get to the edge of Europe, you've got a choice at that point. You either take the rail across Russia, or you go through the Middle East.
Yeah.
You go through Turkey and then the Middle East. This is Northern Hemisphere, obviously.
Yeah.
Personally, given current situation, I'd jump on the train across Russia. I'd jump,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to be another what? Is that like a 9-day journey? All the way across from Russia to China?
I mean, Russia's quite vast, so it's probably easily.
Then you've got to cross China,
which is going
to be another 9-day journey. So we're already looking at a month there from England.
Yeah.
Then from China, you're going to fly from China to the US, aren't you? That's going to be the fastest way. You're going to jump on a plane from China, and you're going to fly to Washington State. You're going to fly into Seattle.
Probably Seattle or LA, or probably whatever. Then
you're going to cross America. Now, America is straight lines across the country. So if there's ever a country to cross on a motorbike, it's America.
Yeah. I'll just ask. What's on this? Very quick question. Did either of you two watch the series Long Way Round with Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman, where they went around the world on motorcycles?
No,
I've seen various ones like it, but not that one.
That's a fantastic series. It's really worth a watch. And it took them obviously several months, but when they got to certain parts, and they didn't necessarily do the fastest route. They did a route around the world on motorcycles. And then they got to certain parts, certainly say in Russia, where the roads were not very good.
Plus Russia, northern China. Do you really want to be riding in the snow and the ice?
Yeah.
Well, they rode the road of bones in Russia, which is not exactly.
Ouch.
Yeah.
My spine hurts just thinking about that. I can feel the vibrations in my hands just thinking about that.
Anyway,
you land in America. You cross America either by car or by motorbike. Is there a train across America? I don't think there is there? No.
America's rail system is all but dismantled.
Yeah. So you drive across, and it took us 4 days to get from Tennessee to Montana.
Yeah.
I had an extra 2 days from Montana to Seattle. So it's a week across America. So we're on 5 weeks, and then a flight from New York to London. So I reckon you could do it, taking it easy, allowing for minor delays in about 6 weeks.
So,
not that you'd want to do it that fast, but yeah.
And what would you say, Scummer?
What around the world? I mean, we're excluding. Are we excluding planes here?
No planes unless you're crossing an ocean.
Yeah.
Because you can get a plane from the UK to Australia that takes 18 hours.
Yeah,
and then the same again from Australia back to the UK.
Because, I mean, theoretically, in maybe a day and a half, if you're using planes, you can fly from London to London again with a couple of stopovers, kind of thing. I mean, I believe, as much as I hate the prick, I did see one of Jeremy Clarkson's things where he kind of did that when he was doing something about the jet engine or something, but essentially he traveled around the world or whatever in
80 hours, I think it was, wasn't it? He aimed for.
It was it was maybe 2 days possibly, but
but I will say I'm talking about only using civilian travel that is actually available to the public rather than chartering anything. Because if you can charter, things are going to go a lot faster anyway.
Oh no, this isn't charter, and I'll say that's not even chartering anything. That's with commercial flights.
Commercial flights, yeah.
So you're only allowed to use a plane to cross an ocean.
Yeah,
I'd give it 6 weeks.
So we're saying realistically, we're saying the Pacific and the Atlantic, the two major oceans.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now it takes 5.5 hours from Philadelphia Airport to Leeds Bradford. I know because I've looked this up. I don't know how long it takes from China to the US.
Yeah, it often depends on which way you're going with flights.
It does as well, because you've got to realize as well you're going to get either with time or against it, aren't you? So.
Yeah. I mean, if you fly towards, I found if you fly towards the Americas from the UK, it's going to be slightly longer than if you are on the way back.
Yeah.
It always takes. I don't know. It's like let's say it takes 9 hours to fly to the United States from the UK. It's going to take maybe 8 hours to 7.5 to fly back. So
which is kind of counterintuitive. Because you'd think if you're going that way and the planet's coming this way, you'd meet in the middle.
If you're and so going eastwards is probably your best bet. I think you could do it in 6 weeks.
That's allowing for minor inconveniences in between.
That's
a rough guess. And rough guess. That's a rough guess.
So it's a rough guess.
So earlier, I went into Google Maps and Googled flights. You could theoretically do it in 15 days.
15 days, okay.
So
if you fly in the southern hemisphere, because there's more ocean there, so you can take up more space by flying across it.
So,
well, I'll just say hopefully one day.
So travel time from London to Khabarovsk-Novoy Airport, which is the furthest.
Khabarovsk-Novoy, yeah.
Yeah, which is the furthest east airport.
See, now you didn't say that. You said only across ocean, so I assumed we had to stop at the closest airport to the ocean. That's how I was working out my calculations.
So
otherwise, why didn't I fly from China to the east coast of America?
From the Russian airport to Tokyo.
It's a 6-hour flight?
Yeah, it's a 6-hour flight. Then Tokyo to LA is another half a day. and then drive from LA to Dulles, you can do it in 2 to 4 days.
I dare you to drive LA to Dulles in 4 days.
Yeah.
I dare you. I know for a fact you couldn't do that because you're a stickler for the speed limit.
Yeah. But this is all Google travel time.
Yes, but Google travel time is not real life travel time. I was working off real life estimates.
So Google travel time, and then of course another quarter day, Dulles to London.
Dulles to London is what, 7 hours? 7 hours?
Yeah, 6-7 hours. So Google travel time, you could do it in 15 days. So adding another 5 for setbacks, you could theoretically do it in 20 days.
Yeah. I dare you.
I would not take that.
I don't have £20,000 to bet you, but I dare you.
Okay.
I would not take that bet because I know I couldn't do it because of my epilepsy.
Yeah.
Let's just say if one of us wins the lottery and has the money to do this, will the 3 of us will do that trip together? You know?
Yeah. I'm up for that.
Okay.
I'm up for that.
And that's a big if the whole one of us needs to win the lottery really to do that. But you know.
Do any of us even play the lottery?
Occasionally, but not regularly.
But according to Google, you straight up just can't go through the Middle East. The routing stops once you hit Pakistan.
Yeah.
No,
you probably could, but you're doing it under the radar, and you're doing it taking your life in your hands.
Yeah,
that's why I said Russia and China.
No, the routing stops. The routing stops once you hit India and China.
Yeah.
So that's why I had to go through Russia.
Yeah. Well, that's why I thought to go through Russia, because if time is of the essence, you don't want to be traveling through war zones.
Yeah.
And also I have to think that I am AFAB. Yeah. I don't need to be stopped for driving. Thank you.
Yeah. So final thoughts.
It's a fun story, isn't it? It's a laugh. It's a giggle. It's of its time, but what book isn't?
Yeah.
It's fun, and I think it'll stay fun. And it taps into a sense of adventure that no matter how small the world gets, you know, we're talking in real time from America to the UK. No matter how small the world gets, there's always going to be parts of the world that people want to see.
Yeah.
So the idea of a round the world trip, you know, I would quite happily, I think, retire and jump on a cruise around the world for 3 months or 6 months.
Yeah.
You know, if I had the money and the means, just to say that I did it, it's one of those bucket list things, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I really do think that's what Verne's tapped into here, is that bucket list mentality of, you know, we adventure and wanting to see the world. Because I think first and foremost, we are curious about other cultures and other people. But I will also say, all of that aside, this book is essentially an advertisement for travel in the British Empire. Don't
Yeah, it's like even the America bit is like you don't want to go to America because all the Americans are rude.
Yeah.
Okay. My final thoughts on this. Despite all his issues and it being a product of his times, I think in a lot of ways this is a timeless story that will always be entertaining. Hey, look, in long after we're dead, 200, 300 years now, this will be still a classic story.
Well, we're still reading the Odyssey, and that's basically the ancient.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I hate to even compare like Around the World 80 Days to the Odyssey, but this could be one of those things that it is a timeless story. That is a lot of fun, and put aside some of the prejudices of the time period it was written in. This is a fucking fun story. That is timeless. It's great. It's a great event. It is really, it's one of the real great adventure stories ever written.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
And it's like all the other hosts have said, it's a really fun story. What I really like about it, and what has basically been failed to what the adaptations I've seen have failed to portray, is the nuance in Fix's motivation and how it's rooted in international politics. Because every adaptation you see of Around the World in 80 Days, he's always gunning for Fogg. But his motivation isn't ruin Fogg's day. His motivation is arrest Fogg and get the reward. And he can only do that while he's on British soil. And
I mean, for me, Fix is less a antagonist as he is an irritant.
Yeah.
He is
kind of how he's
a copper.
Yeah.
He's very one-dimensional. He's not in it for himself. And in that regard, I think he's the ideal copper.
Yeah.
He's
more of a
he thinks about his career, but he's lawful good, isn't he? His entire thing is
he's more of a pain in the arse in this story, and to a certain degree, which is where I mentioned that my first exposure was the cartoon Around the World with Willy Fogg, was my first exposure to this story, because that was a cartoon that was out when I was a child, and I absolutely. And I've got to say, the theme song to that is one of those things that just sticks in your fucking head forever once you've heard of it. But they had to add this they felt the need in that to add this extra character in that was is not in a novel, that where the inspector's kind of again portrayed as bit of a I don't know. Ignorant fool. He's trying to bring Fogg to justice in his own mind, but he's kind of a good guy, but the bumbling kind of thing. Where they had to add this other character in that was hired by a member of the Reform Club to deliberately try and sabotage Fogg's journey.
You do see that in other adaptations as well. You see it in the Jackie Chan adaptation. Where the Bank of England manager does it. I think for me, fixing the original.
That's exactly who it is in that cartoon as well. It's the governor of the Bank of England who hires this guy to fuck with Fogg.
I do think for me, Fix is lawful good to a fault. Like, he could have easily illegally arrested Fogg and just waited for especially in India where there's not a lot of oversight. In Hong Kong, where there's not a lot of oversight, he could have arrested him, stuck him in a cell for a week, and just waited for the arrest warrant to show up. But he didn't, because his job is to wait for the arrest warrant. So that's what he did.
Yeah. So I ran a couple of
define better. Okay, lawful neutral is Javert.
Yeah,
Fix
Twitter
is lawful good.
Twitter agrees with you.
Define a better detective.
Yeah.
If we mean better as in competency-wise, from the point of view of being a detective, Javert.
Yeah.
If we mean better as a actual 3-dimensional human character, Javert.
Yeah.
If we mean better as in his heart's in the right place and he does the right things at the right times, Fix.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd go along with that.
Yeah.
I'd go along with that.
Or to put it another way, of the two, which would you rather arrested you? Fix or Javert?
Fix.
Fix.
Yeah.
Because I know with Fix I'm going to get a fair hearing.
Yeah.
And he is, the law is the law is the law. And he understands the law, but he's not, it's not personal to him. It's just his job. Whereas Javert, it becomes personal within the plot.
Yeah.
And Javert's got a malicious streak.
Yeah. Just figured you guys would be amused by those polls I threw up.
Yeah.
And
I think that's everything then.
Yeah, with that, I think we'll move to shilling.
Okay, cool. I'll go first. So I haven't got nothing necessarily plans coming forward right now, but I've released like 2 videos in the last couple of days. And I'm trying to remember what they were now. Oh yes, I did a 60-second short earlier today, which was a fuck you to Piers Morgan, pretty much.
It took you this long?
It was a long-winded way of saying fuck you, Piers Morgan, but yeah.
Really, fuck you, Piers Morgan?
Yeah. And oh yeah. I did a little bit of thing. I released a little thing a couple of days ago for a bit of fun, which was the too long didn't read version of the Bible. Which check it out. We have a lot of. I had a little bit of fun with that.
Minor prophet that isn't Jonah. Feel free to skip.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Proverbs. God pities the fool that doesn't believe in him.
Yeah. Noodle.
Revelations. We're all gonna die. Nothing to shill. Although my pro ship roundtable stream went really well, and we were talking about doing another one, so I may do another one. As usual with that, well, as with the first one, that's not going to be something I'm going to shill massively up front. Because, as I'm sure anyone who watched was aware, we did have some issues with people in the chat misbehaving. And what I don't want is a dog pile. So keep an eye out for it. I normally, if I'm going to do it, I'll give you 2 to 3 hours notice, and it will be either on a Saturday or a Sunday night, because that'll be when suitable for most people. So keep an eye out for it. If it's going to happen, I will advertise it, but otherwise not really a lot to shill from me at the moment.
And Sam.
I showed up just in time for that then. I know I keep saying this. Equally, I've actually got it set up now, and I've stopped having technical issues. So we're actually going to have on Wednesday our first guest on Pub Religion.
So that's when that episode's actually airing.
Yes.
Last episode was really good.
Cheers. It was just a fun thing that was a bit of a more light-hearted topic, I guess. Yeah. And then I will eventually get the Patreon set up, because Maddie and Will are going to keep bullying me about that until I do.
Peer
pressure. I think that's buy it from me.
Yeah. And next Saturday, obviously secular D&D. Next Sunday, Media Musings is going to be on hiatus because I need to play chauffeur. But the Sunday after that, we are going to have Julia the voiceover while we talk Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court.
But the Sunday after that, that is the 26th.
Oh, yeah, that means I'm going to have to go and read it. that mean I'm going to have to go and read that book?
Yeah.
Probably.
You've got 2 weeks' notice, so there's no excuse not to scum
Yeah,
up.
I'll try and find time to do it. Okay, but
There's a LibriVox version.
Also, one last bit of shilling in the description below. There is a link to the book we discussed on Project Gutenberg. Major hashtag not sponsored, but if you're looking for a book that's in the public domain, you can probably get it for free on Project Gutenberg.
Yeah. You can get it in like every file format known to humankind.
Yeah.
I think if you ask them really nicely, they'll post you a floppy disk, but don't quote me on that.
And
I'm joking, but yeah.
And with that, we'll move to taglines.
Oh, speaking of, no, before that, one thing to shill. Project Gutenberg, LibriVox, is basically the Project Gutenberg of audiobooks. If you prefer audiobooks to reading, which some people do. If you've got long drives, things like that, LibriVox is your answer. People literally donate their time and read chapters of it, and then it all gets collated and put together in a zip file for you to download. So there's that.
Taglines.
Take care, be good, and if you can't be good, remember, use your noodle.
I don't really do taglines. I'll just say, may all of your stains be large ones.
Have a day, and remember, communication is key.
And remember, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think on. Too often, we forget that.